You're listening to the N.W.A, the Nubian Wrestling Advocates.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
Yo, it's Righteous Reg. It's a case for the safe, keep a space for the Nubians. Unfiltered, off-kilter, the professor, the Godfather. Post-wrestling, the N.W.A, not keep guessing, The views and expressions, you know the rest it's pod excellence, get the message. Advocates for Nubian wrestling, you're listening to the best again. Black wrestling in the ring we invested in. Nubian kings and queens we invested in. It's for the culture and we reppin' it. It's for the culture and we reppin' it.
And welcome to the N.W.A. Podcast, the Nubian Wrestling Advocates, the show all about getting color in the professional wrestling business. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am one of your hosts, the Godfather, Milton, and we are back and better than ever, blacker than ever, more hyped up off that Moderna and Hennessy than ever. And speaking of your favorite player's favorite cocktail, let me bring in my tag team partner. Let me bring in the co-host. This man hails from Southern California. He is the angry intellectual. Y'all know him. Y'all love him. Give it up for Kris, the Professor Ealy. Kris, what's good, brother?
Man, just chilling, yo. Just ready to talk about this wrestling business.
Let's not waste any time, brother. We got lots to get into, man. And so we got to start this show off the way that we do every single month here on the Nubian Wrestling Advocates. And that's by enlightening people, y'all. That's by bringing people the truth. That's by bringing people the news. So, ladies and gentlemen, y'all give it up for my nephew, the youngest in charge, Andrew Thompson with the news.
Yo.
What's good, brother Andrew?
My dual uncles, Nate and Moderna Kris, in the building. I don't know if y'all can see. I can't see Kris, but I got the golden headset on right now, looking real lavish. Fancy as hell.
Them post wrestling checks and stuff. Kris out here living large now with this post wrestling money, y'all. He's like on that episode of Chappelle's Show when they finally started paying reparations. Your man Ashley Larry was out there in a truck. He's like, I'm rich. Yeah. That's how Kris is living right now. But like before we get into the news, man, because we got a lot to talk about this month, Andrew. A lot of big stories inside and outside of the squared circle. We do need to take a moment, take a pause for the cause, and pay our respects to a member of the family, a member of the brotherhood that is no longer with us, somebody who had an impact on the wrestling community, probably a bigger impact than he even knew. Yeah. So let's start off the top by taking a little time to reminisce over our brother Jamal Hepburn. So Kris, let's start with you first, because I think you might have known him longer than any of us here on the program. Just some thoughts about the brother, some fond memories you might have had of the brother, man. Just tell the people about kind of your relationship with Jam.
So with Jamal, I met him back in, I want to say, 08, 09. I guess he saw me commenting on one of the law boards or whatever, that he just started just chat up wrestling with me and just sending me all kind of different stuff. And then we were in a few different chat discussions together. I think even you were part of a few of them, Nate. But he was a big time Heat fan, and I was a Laker fan, so we would go back and forth on that. He was just a cool dude, and when I found out about he went missing first. Mm-hmm. And then I found that out probably before most people online, I think me and Hugo found out that he went missing. So I started calling his phone. I was texting him to see where he was at. And then he signed on for a little bit, like the day after he was missing. And I was like, dude, where are you at? People were looking for you. And then he signed off real quick. So that was a little bizarre. And then the next day I found out that he had passed away. And, you know, and I knew that he had a lot of followers on Twitter and stuff like that, because I know he would message like Chris Hero regularly. He would message like Bronson Reed, a bunch of different cats in wrestling, and he amassed a huge online following just because of the videos and all the things that he posted. And like, he was really one of my better friends online. And I don't know if, like, the one thing that I do want to do is I want to I don't know if his parents even knew how impactful he was, his mom and stuff like that, because this was a brother who was autistic, and he still managed to finish 2 college degrees, you know, and he was always up on the rise. I talked to him about wrestling. I talked to him about like personal things, you know what I'm saying? I talked to him about, you know, his dreams, his goals, his ambitions. Yeah, man, it was really, really tough week when he passed away. So I just hope that he stays entrenched in wrestling discussions about, like, you know, all the just cool content that he provided. Some of this stuff, I don't know how he provided. Some of that stuff messed up my computer a little bit, you know what I'm saying?
Let's just say the brother was a primary investor in Nefarious Means Cable Company.
Yeah,
a finesser, as we call him.
A finesser, one of the original finessers, man.
Yeah, but
it's funny, man, because like it's crazy because, like you said, like I had a friendly relationship with Jamal, and you know it kind of all goes back to that brotherhood group from the law, where there's a lot of us, man, like, you know, yourself, me, Ronnie Richards, the enforcer out in H-Town, you know, Hugo, Chad. It's a bunch of, like, if I start naming like Sweets, like if I start naming too many people, like I'm gonna leave somebody off just because there was a lot of us, man. And then like my earliest kind of memory and interaction with him was probably on some TNA stuff, man, because it was like times, Chris, when I was the only one out here trying to represent for TNA. And Jam had my back in a lot of them conversations. And then, you know, kind of moving forward to 2013, when we started the Kings of Sport podcast, like a lot of the support for that show came from the brotherhood, came from, you know, like that Facebook group. And, you know, he was always, since day one of the people that would write us and comment and, you know, have opinions, and we go back and forth. Like I remember arguing about the Heat when they had the big three, you know, and just going back and forth like that. And always had a positive attitude, always, even if we disagreed on a certain topic, man, he found a way to disagree without being disagreeable. And again, you know, to kind of see the outpouring of love and respect after his untimely passing. And, you know, like you said, people like Chris Hero, people like on this network, like I didn't know, you know, W.H. Park had a connection to Jamal. And it's like, you never know the impact and the effect that you can have on people. And so, yeah, like I hope he knew while he was here how much he meant to us and how much he meant to the larger, you know, online wrestling community. And like, we definitely will not let his memory be forgotten, man, because he was just a really, really good dude, man. You know, you hear so often, Andrew, about the negativity and the the foolishness and the hateration and the holleration that comes, from being online and interacting in social media in this wrestling space. But he was always, man, one of the good people out there that made every interaction, made every connection he had better just because of who he was as a person.
Yeah, just like both you and Kris mentioned, like that outpour support for Jamal was, it really was beautiful to see. Like so many different people, like even people, like you said, people that you didn't know had interactions with him. Like they came out and shared so many different stories, man. So many people talking about different conversations they had with him, whether it be wrestling, basketball, politics. Especially because I had a couple conversations with him through social media about politics, which are always entertaining, always funny. And like I even remember a couple weeks back when I put out the Chris Hero interview, he sent me a real nice message in my DM just saying some nice things, man. We had a couple interactions like that when I would be looking for a match, when I'd be trying to do some research on the story or something. He had that thing propped up and ready in like 10 minutes off the rip. Like, so he was like, and then, after that we'll have a couple more conversations, just, short stuff, but it was always friendly, man. And he was just always a cool dude to me. And that stuff sticks out with me a lot, whether it be in person or on social media or whatever. Like when a person, like when you and a person really don't that necessarily know each other, but you know of each other, and there's still that like underlying sort of respect or just people being nice, man. You know what I'm saying? Like because especially like you said, Twitter in some spaces can be social media in some spaces can be very negative. You can have a lot of negative interactions with people, but just knowing that there's a group of people out there like Jamal who spread positivity and, sort of bring people together through this thing that we here today talking about, professional wrestling. Like I do hope, just like you said, Nate, that he was able to realize, like the impact that he had and like how easy and accessible he made it for so many people to tune into some of these matches and get some of these archive matches that you probably wouldn't even be able to find, to be honest. And man, so I hope that he did know that, and it was really cool to see, really beautiful to see so many people sharing so many stories about him, man. And but blessings to his family.
Well, no doubt. And Kris, I guess my kind of last thing on this, man, is not only do we want to, honor the brother, pay homage to the brother this week, but also, man, like, let this be another reminder. And I don't know why we always need to be reminded of this, Kris. Maybe it's just part of the human condition, but for a lot of us, we take for granted the relationships we have, be that friends or family or, connections on social media or whatever, of people that make our lives better, of people that are just positive and good. And it shouldn't take something like this, man. It shouldn't take something tragic for us to appreciate the people in our lives. So, like, rest in power to this brother, man. He's somebody that will not be forgotten. Certainly is not as long as we have a microphone, not as long as we have a voice. We're not going to let people forget about this dude, man. And again, as Andrew said, man, blessings to his family, and hopefully they can find some peace, man. It's not going to be easy, but hopefully they understand like how much this brother was loved, how much this brother was respected, and how much this brother's going to be missed, Kris.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I've been kind of passing messages to his brother through Hugo, because Hugo actually had a personal relationship with him.
The Miami boys.
Yeah, they rolled together and stuff like that. And even Hugo said that they weren't, ever since Hugo got married, he wasn't in constant communication with them, but he still communicated with them. And, we just, like you said, we just gotta just keep his memory alive, man, and just, just think about him every once in a while, which
absolutely.
Is, what I'm going to do.
So, rest in peace, Jamal Hepburn, brother. We appreciate you. We love you. We ain't going to forget you. But Andrew, like we said, man, his brother was one of the OGs in terms of, letting people find out about things. Like he may have had an affiliation with nefarious means. I'm not going to put that on record just in case the feds is listening. But in the spirit of our brother Jam, man, why don't you enlighten us and give us some news that we might not know about, man?
Definitely some good stories coming out this week. First, we're gonna start us off with the good man, the Ring of Honor, pure champion, Jonathan Gresham. He's had a very impressive year match quality wise, man, and it's only going to get better from here. September 17th, ladies and gentlemen, at GCW has in the room. Jonathan Gresham will be going one-on-one with the legendary Minoru Suzuki. On top of that, MLW's Calvin Tankman is also getting the chance to wrestle Suzuki at the WrestleMax show in St. Louis. We all know how popular Suzuki is, and to have two black men, two prominent black men in wrestling, very talented individuals, Jonathan Gresham and Calvin Tankman, in marquee matches with them, especially if they turn out great. It's going to be nothing but positive for Gresham and Calvin Tankman coming out of this. Chris, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, man. I've been loving this brother's ascent. He's been on my radar for a little while. He's, small guy as far as like height and stuff, but I mean, he impresses in the ring, and that's all that matters at the end of the day for me. So I'm looking forward to him in the battle with Suzuki.
Okay, Chris, that's gonna be on your side too. They ain't gonna be in Los Angeles.
Yeah. See, I wanted to go to that, but I'm still kind of I'm taking this new medication, and it's my body's still getting used to it. So I'm gonna make a team effort to try to go to it.
You say your mind is telling you yes, but your body,
Look, we got to put a moratorium to the R. Kelly reference.
Hey, I wasn't even gonna bring up Robert's name. You don't want to put his name out there. I was just gonna say that was a Nate Milton original. I'm like you, Chris, man. I got a lot of love for this brother Gresham, man. Right. Of course, he's a Georgia boy, so already. I had affinity for this dude when he was coming up. I don't think, we need to hold this man's size against him, speaking for all the short kings in the room, in attendance. I think this dude is just continued to ascend, man. He's in that spot, Andrew, where he's not quite like this fresh, green, newcomer, but he's also still got lots of years ahead of him, man. He's in that perfect spot. I think he's in his early 30s. So this dude is there. He's right there on the cusp, I feel, Andrew, for taking that next step. A lot of people already know about what Gresham can do. They already know what he does in the ring. But I think this is the year, and maybe last year would have been the year if not for COVID. But I feel like he's right there, Andrew, ready to take that next step.
Yeah, he 100% is, not even a question, one of the best in-ring talents out there. When you talk about just in-ring, it's hard not to throw Jonathan Gresham in that top 10 when you're looking at talents that's out there right now. I don't think there's many people that out there that can outwork him and that knows more about the sort of technical style of wrestling, and he kind of mixes everything in. He had a great match against Adam Priest at the IWTV 100 show, and he had the match with Mike Bennett at the Ring of Honor Best in the World show last month. So yeah, Jonathan Gresham definitely one of the best wrestlers out there, and of course, not to forget about Calvin Tankman, who wrestles in MLW. He's very, very, very talented. He's young too, I believe, and yeah, man, him getting to wrestle Suzuki, that's gonna be an interesting clash of styles, and I'm interested to see how both of those matches turn out. So yeah, shout out to them brothers, man, for securing the marquee matches, the main event matches for GCW and WrestleMax respectively. Moving on, of course, a topic that has been covered all week. Nate, you talked about it on the post podcast, SummerSlam podcast. Chris, I'm pretty sure that you got us a couple Twitter squabbles over this. It's been covered all week, man. Bianca Belair lost at SummerSlam to Becky Lynch on the August 27th episode of SmackDown. Belair, she did appear on the show, and very, very happy, with a big smile on her face. And then she outlasted Zelina Vega, Carmella, and Leah Morgan in an elimination match to get another shot at the title. The Nationwide Arena in Columbus, they're advertising Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair for the SmackDown Women's title at Extreme Rules. So it looks like that's most likely going to be the route that they're going to go. I think we're all kind of thinking the same thing. If they knew that the outcome was going to be, a Becky Lynch versus Bianca match, why couldn't they just have waited and then did the switch at Extreme Rules? Mm-hmm. And, following some other stuff. Of course, it was reported by PW Insider, who is a credible source that we all know, that Becky Lynch is going to be presented as a heel. She got a hell of a babyface reaction when she returned on SmackDown. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works. But Bianca also, the crowd, they reacted very positively to her as well. So Nate, when you look at it like that and you see that the crowd coming off that loss, maybe it was just that specific crowd in general, like we don't know, but just judging off that, seeing how the crowd reacted to Bianca, they really seem like they're behind her still, but at the same time, it's going to be hard, I think, to present Becky Lynch as a heel just because of that uprise she had from being sort of in a nothing position to really becoming the face of the company for real. So when you look at it like that, how do you think, with the hindsight being 2020, do you think that this sort of road that they're taking with Becky versus Bianca at Extreme Rules, it would still be as effective had not, the squash match happened? And then on top of that, to try to speak a little bit about Bianca's professionalism, because I think that's something that's really been overlooked. She did a post-show interview at the SummerSlam party, got her stuff on, and went straight to the party, man, smile on her face, nothing bad about and I know people would be like, oh man, I know she probably pissed, but I mean, dude, like, what do you expect her to do? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? She's a professional, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what she does. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about, all of that. And then on top of that, sort of seeing how Bianca handled the outcome of the whole scenario. Cause I'm pretty sure just as a human being, that shit is disappointing.
Yeah. Well, not only is hindsight 2020 in terms of a week out from SummerSlam, Andrew, but like we got double the hindsight because, full disclosure, we're recording this segment after we recorded our panel discussion that Kris and I had with our guests this month. So not only I got 2020, Kris, I got 40-40 vision. Like I'm at the 40-40 Club ESPN on the screen right now.
Yeah.
When it comes to Bianca Belair. And I'll just kind of go backwards, Andrew. Like I'll start with what we saw last night on SmackDown first. Because this is a no-win situation for everybody involved. Like the match, whenever they have a actual legit match, not a 26-second match, like, it's going to be fire. It's going to be good. But the story has already started off on the wrong foot, where you've alienated a portion of your audience with the way that you did Bianca at SummerSlam on Saturday. And so then you compound that by making Becky the heel, like you said. Who wants to boo this woman that has come up, started from the bottom, now she's here. And not only did we see her on that ascent, Andrew, but she just came back from having a baby. Who wants to boo the mother? Like, nobody wants to boo this woman, man. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. And so, like, I think there is a way to organically get to a Becky Lynch heel story, but this is not it. And it doesn't do Becky any favors. It certainly doesn't do Bianca any favors. And I'll mention it in the second part of the show, but, people try to make the comparison to Daniel Bryan and Sheamus.
Different, bro. So
exactly.
Different.
Like
different, Nate.
That was something. And again, like, even if you want to say, like, okay, maybe best case scenario, she becomes a female version of Daniel Bryan. Like, it took Daniel Bryan 1.5 years, 2 years to get to that point, Andrew. And the fans had to drag the company kicking and screaming to the point where they finally pulled the trigger on D-Bry. And
thank you.
This is not the same thing, right? Like, I think that you have to give Bianca a lot of credit, man, because obviously, like, on the one hand, this is her job. Like, so what do you expect her to do? Right. She's got to do her job. But we've seen in this business, in this professional wrestling business, we've seen some unprofessional people. Shout out to that man, Terry.
I mean, if we being real, you could look at Austin Aries when he lost to Mount Floyd.
Okay. Yes, that's an even more recent example than Terry. I just wanted to take the cheap pop and throw some shade at Terry, Andrew. But yeah, like, I give Bianca all the credit in the world, man, because she is somebody, when you look at kind of the new direction, quote unquote, for NXT, she's what they want.
Yeah.
Somebody who doesn't have, homegrown, doesn't have all this indie baggage, quote unquote, like a pure natural athlete personality that jumps off the screen. Like, why wouldn't you maximize this? And so my issue is not that Bianca lost the title, Andrew. My issue is the way that they did it. And it was very, even a week later, man, it's disrespectful. It doesn't sit well with me. frankly ruined SummerSlam. Like, if you look at the energy, especially online, like, it's a different story if you were there in attendance, because I have friends that were in Vegas, and they say, like, the vibe in the building was different than people watching at home. But for most of the folks watching at home, the show died for about a good hour after that Bianca match and didn't pick up again until Seth and Edge, man. So, like, how do you fumble the bag, Andrew, with Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair? That story should write itself, but unfortunately, like, they had to get in their own way, and I don't know if they're going to be able to fix this.
Yeah, and before we pass it over to Kris, like I mean, the obvious route that they're going is Extreme Rules in September, and most likely Becky Lynch is going to retain the title. But I'm like, you could have easily just done that match at Extreme Rules with Bianca going in as champion, and then have them go out there and have a good match, and then, you know, do the title switch there, because it's going to be even. I would say the reaction that people that are upset about the way Bianca lost is going to be even worse, because if they go out there and have a great match, people will be like, well, why didn't you just do that at SummerSlam? Or why didn't you just wait until, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of stuff within that. But before Kris...
Here's the bad thing, Andrew, before we turn it over to Kris. Like, the booking for this has been so bad, you got Liv Morgan out here catching strays. Because I'm watching this, like, ain't nobody got beef with Liv Morgan. Everybody love Liv Morgan. They made me actively angry on SmackDown when Liv Morgan came out. I was like, I need a shot. Like, no, you don't. Like, the hell you do. Like, I'm gonna need you to wait till this sister gets her rematch.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have me feeling some type of way about Liv Morgan like that? From a storyline standpoint, Andrew, like, they've messed us all the way up, man.
Probably one of the cooler things that I recently saw from Bianca. I don't know if y'all had the chance to see the picture. It was just like a cool moment. Like, it might not seem that cool to a lot of people, but like, if like us, you growing up in a black household, like, seeing what she posted a picture of Naomi and her in the locker room, and Naomi was like doing her hair, and Bianca had captioned it. She was like, sometimes it's just the therapy you need. And you know, and I think we get that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that type of that's a small sentence says a lot within, you know, and I think most of us catch that. So before, you know, I was gonna pass it over to Kris now.
Yeah, what did Florida Evans say when James died? Damn.
Yeah,
this is just more of the same kind of bullshit from WWE. I get tired of it. I get frustrated with it. And I don't even want to see where it's going to go, because I don't think it's going to go anywhere productive. I go back and forth with, is Bianca going to get to that level again? Because I can see her getting back to that level again, but I could also easily see them being like, you know what, you had your turn, you're just going to be like every other woman on this roster now. And I hope the latter doesn't happen, but I do think WWE is a company where they have who they feel are their stars, you know. It's that unconscious bias thing, because people like to me, it's the people that don't want to talk about race in this situation are the ones that are clueless. They're the ones that got the problems, you know. They're the ones that aren't critically thinking about this situation.
Hold on here, Kris. Hold on a minute, brother. You are not gonna bring your critical race theory onto the Nubian wrestling. How dare you, sir?
Yeah.
Why does everything have to be about race?
Yeah. I wish it. See, that's the thing too. Is I wish it didn't have to be about race. But it's like
hold on, Kris. Let's underline this point, because I think this is something that gets lost in the sauce a lot of times. Like, people are like, man, why do black people always have to talk about race? Or why do LGBTQ folks always have to talk about homophobia? Why do women always have to talk about sexism? Like, dog, we don't want to talk about this, but in order to get rid of this stuff, we have to talk about. Believe me, I would love to be able to wake up and not have to talk about race on any of these shows ever again. But that's not the world we live in, Kris.
Yeah, it's like if you want to talk about this, certain conversations, race is just gonna be a part of the conversation. And you can't just ignore that component to it. You can't ignore the fact that Kofi Kingston was black when the same kind of thing happened to him with Brock Lesnar, and now it's happening with Bianca. You know?
And the thing is, Kris, like again, like getting back to the booking, like everybody in that company gets hit with a bad booking brush from time to time.
Yeah.
The issue is if you're black or if you're brown or if you're, a woman not named Charlotte Flair, like your numbers, like the numbers and the percentage, right?
Right.
It's skewed because if you got 20 white dudes on the main roster and 10 of them are being booked bad, that's bad, but it's only half.
Yeah.
If you've got 15 black dudes on the roster and 10 of them are getting booked bad, that's damn near 75%.
Yeah, that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? When you're like, when Rusev, God bless him, he's in AEW now, but when Rusev was in WWE, every guy they gave this dude at first was a black guy. You know, it's just like black guy after black guy after black guy. It's like, and I can honestly say that they didn't see that as a race thing. They saw it as who's the most expendable person to put in the ring with this guy. And at that moment in time, it just so happened to be the black guys. And that's kind of like the uphill battle that we're still trying to fight in WWE, and they're doing some good things with NXT, but is NXT going to turn into like the black brand or whatever? Is it going to be, just
no.
I
that's already my look, because we don't know what NXT is going to become, but I doubt it's going to become the black brand. I think it'll be more colorful, so to speak. Yeah. But I don't trust Nick Khan out here on these streets, man.
Yeah. I don't trust Nick Khan either, because I think he's doing things that Vince McMahon likes. But I think, and we talk about this on the second half of this show, I think he's no different than Wilson, Barrios, any other people that have had those positions, Heyman, Bischoff, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. The minute something goes wrong, he's going to get the blame for it. He was a good super agent in Hollywood. He's not going to be good in this job because he's just not going to be allowed to be good at the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but both of y'all brothers made some good points, man. But we got some quick positive shout outs to some good people, man, within the wrestling world. I just wanted to get you guys' quick thoughts on that before we get back to the main story. A shout out to that brother Titus O'Neil, who's going to be honored at the Orange Blossom Classic in Florida, which celebrates black men in sports and entertainment. He'll be honored alongside the likes of Adrian James, Super Bowl champion Kevin Carter, and a couple more people. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen all the work that Titus has done for communities in Florida. He had like a back to school drive and at the Raymond James Stadium for like 3 years in a row, and thousands and thousands of school supplies to young kids, man, out there, man, building schools, doing all types of stuff. So yeah, shout out to Titus. He may not be on people's radar when it comes to the in-ring stuff, but he is definitely a very positive reinforcement for WWE to have under contract.
Yeah, shout out to that brother Titus, man. Like he's one of the dudes I think should have a job for life. Like he should be like the black Michael Hayes. Like this dude should always have a job just for the amount of goodwill he has, engendered towards that company and the community.
Yeah, as long as he always understands that Vince McMahon is not his friend. If he just stays in WWE and does his job and does things the way that they're supposed to do for the culture, the community, and everything, he'll be perfectly fine. Like Dave Bautista said some years ago when that whole thing happened with him and McMahon, Titus O'Neil is not a guy that needs to be in wrestling. You know what I'm saying? He could be doing a million different world-changing things out there. WWE should be grateful to have him. Yeah. He should be grateful for the way he's uplifting the community and the work that he's doing. Inspiration to me personally, because, Titus O'Neil is in a space that I want to be in. But just remember, Vince McMahon is not your friend.
Yo, this man, Andrew Thompson, to put a button on Titus, this man took the ultimate bullet for all of us.
Yeah.
And was out there hosting WrestleMania with Terry. Titus did that for us.
Right.
And I don't think he said one negative word about Hulk. The way I'm talking about me, I'm pretty sure he got some thoughts, but he really kept that all to himself. Another one, just a constant professional, man. And then also another quick shout out to Naomi, who returned on SmackDown. She's officially part of the SmackDown roster. I think a lot of people, including all of us, are looking at the obvious thing that would get Naomi a lot of attention and a lot of TV time is to be aligned with her legit family, the bloodline. I think that would be a very interesting way, and to present a heel challenger, a heel Naomi, that I think would be really entertaining. Just you guys' quick thoughts. Chris, I'm gonna go to you first. Do you think that they'll go the route of just, what they usually do, Naomi, just be in the mix, or do you think they'll actually pull the trigger on this thing and have her in that storyline that will give her a lot of TV time?
Well, they're always hot and cold with someone like Naomi. Trinity, I'm going to call her, because I like that name better than Naomi. I think that she...
Chris out here flexing his total divas knowledge.
His total divas knowledge.
Yeah,
Now, Chris, before you continue on, you want to know what's funny? Like, they act like Naomi is like a part of this old guard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, they act like she's like this pro. Naomi's like literally in her prime years right now.
Right,
like,
yeah, just a beautiful sister, and just... she does her job, man. I don't think she's ever going to be bottom of the barrel in that company, but I don't think they see her as a top of the heap person either. I think she's what they call a good hand. I think, she's always going to be relevant in WWE. Is just the degrees of relevancy that she has while she's in that company. Is going to be what we got to pay attention to, man. But I love Naomi, man. I'd love to see her in other places, see what she could do. But as long as she's in WWE, they're taking care of her, and she's happy, and her family's happy. Then, what can I say?
Yeah, Naomi's dope, man. Like, I think, she is somebody that's been good for a long time and, has had the fans or a portion of the fans riding with her for a minute. She's always going to be in the mix. She's going to be like a gatekeeper, I think, Andrew.
Yeah.
Where, like, she'll get a title shot every now and then, but, like, for everybody on the come up, like, Naomi's the bar. Like, if you can hang with Naomi, then you can take that next step. If you can't hang with Naomi, you might have to kick rocks. And I think in terms of a story, the bloodline is an obvious story to place her into. I also think, she could kind of be Bianca's backup, because Bianca is just outnumbered right now, man. Like, you got Becky, you got Sasha whenever Sasha come back.
Carmella and
Selena, yep, Carmella. So, like, right now, the only friend she got is Liv Morgan, and I don't even like Liv Morgan because of the way they presented Liv Morgan on SmackDown, Andrew. So, to me, like, I think Bianca and Naomi could be really fun.
Yeah, and moving on to our next story. This one kind of came out of nowhere. It was a tweet that Brandy Rose sent out, but she later deleted it. I think this was... I think this was in reference to, people talking about the lack of diversity in AEW's main event scene, I believe. She didn't really clarify, but this is the tweet. And then, Chris, I'm gonna kick it to you, and then Nate, you can follow up or join in. She said, this might start some shit, but let's talk. I see a lot of people complaining on here that there aren't enough black talent featured in wrestling yet, when black talent is out there busting it in main events and holding championships. Where's the love? Am I just missing it? Brandy Rose later deleted that tweet.
Brandy, come to this show. We need to talk to you. And we're not even, because I don't 100% disagree with her. I really don't. Mm-hmm. But I think when you read it in a tweet, it might have came off a little different than she might have meant it. I ride for every black talent that I see. Even if they're not my favorite talent, I'm still riding for them. Like, when everybody was complaining about Johnson coming out at the end of AEW on Wednesday, I was like, hey, brother's coming out doing something. I'm happy. Shit. I don't give a fuck if you fanboys think it's stupid or whatever. This is something I need. I think I understand her frustration, but I do think that, you know, she needs to be in the mix a little bit more. I think if she came on shows like this, where we would have a discussion about Black talent, I think she would alleviate herself from a lot of stress on this thing, because I could see how it's stressful in her eyes. I could see how, you know, she might be frustrated with, you know, they need to, you don't just tap into Black talent magically. You got to have structures in place that's going to cultivate an environment for Black talent to exist in. It's not like we're different than any other race in wrestling, because there's no like African wrestling federation you could kind of point to like that. You know what I'm saying? With Mexican wrestlers, it's all about the luchadors, and they have a culture of wrestling they could tap into. With Japanese wrestling, it's all about Puroresu. They have a culture of Japanese wrestling they could tap into. Mm-hmm. So they always have a fallback. British wrestling, all these different things. They
Talk
have
your shit, Chris. Talk that shit, Chris.
But with black wrestling, we just do not have that. So the way that we fix that is we just have to keep like cultivating an environment for Black wrestlers and Black talent to thrive in, because Black wrestlers don't just have a Mexico where they could just say, oh, so this is where our stuff comes from. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just, and let me just say this. There's a rich history of wrestling culture in ancient Africa, but you kind of have to dig deep and find that. I'm talking about like contemporary stuff. We just don't have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the closest we got is Atlanta.
Right.
Like, and there are like, shout out to some of these, you know, we've talked about them here on the program, Andrew, some of these indie shows that are, you know, for the culture and by the culture. But in terms of like at grand scale that you're talking about, no, we don't have that. And that kind of, if you want to get real deep with it, that kind of mimics the African-American experience in America, where we know kind of our roots, but there's been a lack of connection to that history just because of the way that Black people ended up in this country. And so like there's a lot going on there. But specifically with Brandy Rhodes, I echo Chris's sentiments. Like, anytime you want to come through, sister, you have the floor here at the Nubian Wrestling Advocates. But B, I feel like this tweet is 100% something that Brandy Rhodes should have said, and also 100% something an EVP of AEW should not have said, Andrew. Right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I 100% agree with what Brandy's saying here, but you ain't in the position to say that because of what you got going on in your house. You know, it's like my parents always used to say, man, like you can't, you know, talk about the speck in somebody else's eye when you got a plank in your eye. And it's like, yeah, like, are there things in other companies where they need to tighten up in terms of the way they present their Black talent? Absolutely. But the same thing abides for AEW. And until they fix that or address that, she does not have like the high ground to come out here and say something like that. Like, I'm not going to go as far as some people out there, Chris, that's like, oh, you know, AEW is like this segregated thing, and, you know, WWE is this utopia for Black talent, which obviously it isn't. We've seen that at SummerSlam. But I do feel like AEW's got some stuff in their house they got to clean up, Andrew, and they got to tighten up, man, and fix when it comes to the presentation of Black performers, particularly when it comes to that main event scene, which is super monochromatic right now. And that's no disrespect to a lot of the white brothers that's in the main event scene in AEW. But if you're going to be this change agent, which is kind of what Tony Khan and Cody Rhodes and Kenny and the other EVPs said when this company started, like they were going to make a difference, they were going to make a change, then we need to start seeing some more change in terms of the way your show looks, in terms of the performance your show highlights. And so while I agree personally with what Brandy said, and I can understand her frustration, in her position, she wasn't the one to say that, Andrew.
You want to know what I think would be cool? Like if they if AEW was to sign somebody like Trish Adora, add her to their women's division, or you look at a talent like Darius Lockhart, who's on the independent scene. Like there's a lot of black talent out there, man, that really could sort of open a lot of people's eyes that really aren't aware of how many times the black wrestlers out there, and like be like, oh shit, like it's like I think a lot of people they view certain type of wrestlers, mainly white wrestlers, as like these main event caliber talents. We all have our favorites in professional wrestling. Like I've always been a Bryan Danielson fan and a CM Punk fan, and those are like top level superstars. But there are black talents out there, man, that can reach that level. You just got to put the right promotion behind them. Anybody in professional wrestling can be an absolute superstar, just depending on how you present them. Now there are some who are able to cultivate that on their own. But like when you look at some of these black talents out here, man, like even going back to WWE, look at Ricochet. Yeah. Ricochet has everything outside of the mic skills that WWE can honestly. Well, he may not have the size, but his athleticism and his charisma, and as far as like what he can do in the ring, like he's very he has like very good facial expressions when he's wrestling and stuff like that. Like those little things, and especially combining all the years of experience that he's had in wrestling, like. And marketable dude as well. Like when you look at stuff like that, man, you can get behind Ricochet and make him a top guy. They just choose not to. Like that's just what it is.
I give Brandy Rhodes all the respect in the world, man. She's not in an easy position.
Yeah, she definitely is.
She's married to Cody Rhodes. She's an executive in a company that's mostly white guys.
White executives, yeah.
She's done a very good job with that women's division in AEW. You could crap on what you think of her as a wrestler all you want. She's done a good job. She has gotten, they've got Jade there. She was the one that discovered the native beast, Nyla Rose. She's
got Red Velvet there.
Red Velvet. She's
brought Kira Hogan up in the middle.
Kira Hogan. Yeah, a lot of this is Brandy Rose. She needs to get her roses for that. She's done that. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Chris. You go ahead.
No, she's doing some of the things that she's wants to do. She's doing a lot of the things she wants to do. They just have to kind of figure out the black male portion of things. They got Mark Henry there now. They need to just have they need to have diversity consultants that are wrestling fans that might not necessarily work for AEW, but work for like a third party that they can go to ask certain questions. Because I do think if these issues aren't fixed in AEW, it could become a growing frustration when people are unfairly attacking them as, like a white boy haven or something like that. Because I don't see that when I watch AEW is good wrestling. You know what I'm saying? And that's just what I see. I do notice like these things. We've talked about it on this show, like AEW, get your main event scene up. We've seen our colleague Rich Fann at press conferences ask Tony Khan about the diversity thing. We're gonna always bring it up, but I don't think it's like in the infancy of this company. I do not think the attacks are fair. Brandy Rhodes, I'm 100% in agreement with what Nate said. I think she was right, but I think she's probably not the best person to deliver that kind of message. I think if Brandy Rhodes will do herself some good if she talks to more of us. That's really all she needs to do. She needs to talk to people, black folks in the wrestling space, and we can, like, you know, bounce ideas off each other. Not ideas of how to book their wrestling company. They could do that on their own, but we could just talk about what we experience in the culture and kind of, what you want to see on your wrestling thing, you know? Because, I mean, I think that's just the way you do it, is with conversations. Yeah. I don't
and even beyond Brandy, like, you know, you brought up his name. Like, I think Tony Khan, you know, as a person of color, like, these are some of the criticisms and some of the concerns that you need to be addressing. Like, you know, like I love that, you know, we got people like Rich or people like Andreas Hale that can be at some of these post-show scrums and bring these questions up. But, you know, we got to kind of keep on that. We got to keep that same energy week in and week out until they start to address some of these things, Kris.
Yeah, we just have to. We have to keep the energy up. I don't think people need to be coming for Brandy, because what she said was just entirely false and she was just bashing the culture, I understand it, you know what I'm saying? But we kind of need to I think if you engage with Brandy, we got to do it in a friendly way. You can't do it in an accusatory way. You can't.
And trying to clown her and all that.
Yeah, you just can't do that.
You can't be like Giancarlo Esposito and Do the Right Thing when he was at Sal's Pizza, Andrew.
Yeah,
and eating at Sal's Pizza. Yeah. How come you ain't got no brothers on the wall, Sal? How come you ain't got no brothers up here, man? It's Frank Sinatra and Joe DiMaggio. Where the brothers at, Sal? We can't be like that with Brandy, y'all.
I would like to see AEW feature more Sonny Kiss, to be honest with you. I think the issue is with that. They don't
Sonny
have
been there since day one.
I think the issue with that, they don't have anybody out there anybody there that knows how to properly present Sonny Kiss without possibly writing some condescending shit into the storyline. Like, that's why I think you need more, like, and I know AEW doesn't do the whole writers thing, but I think maybe one or two consultants, maybe not storyline, would really help and really get that in there. Cause like Sonny Kiss is a talented individual. We've seen Sonny wrestle on Dark, seen Sonny on the independent scene. Very, very talented. Can wrestle, can talk on the mic. Like, I think the issue is they just don't have anybody there that can write for Sonny or that can put Sonny in a proper storyline that can be very beneficial. You know what I'm saying?
Like Sonny Kiss and Miro would be a money program.
That would be good. And especially because Miro clicking on all cylinders right now as a heel. That's a good shot.
I think of all the people in AEW right now, Sonny Kiss the most kind of seems like a diversity hire where they just have him there because they want to say they have this gay black man on the roster, but they really don't have any ideas for him that you can really sink your teeth into. And I think that kind of needs. And I remember they had this little program with him that
Cody.
They were doing, and then they just kind of dropped it. I think they kind of, with people like him, I think he needs to be. And maybe he's not going to be a main eventer or whatever, but I think he needs to at least be as relevant as an Orange Cassidy.
Hey, Kris, if you could find time for Brandon Cutler, no disrespect to him.
Yeah.
No disrespect to him, but if you could find time to put Brandon Cutler in a main event match on Rampage, damn sure could find some time for Sonny Kiss to get a quick TV match. Ain't nobody saying, a 60-minute classic. But, dog, if you could find time for so many people, especially now, with all these eyes on AEW, with Punk in there, Bryan Danielson coming into the biggest stars, like I mentioned earlier, in the industry, this is the best time to feature some of that talent that has not been seen before. You can ride the coattails of your main stars while featuring the new people who haven't gotten there yet. And Sonny, I think this would be the perfect time to get him on TV.
Sonny Kiss needs to be as relevant as Orange Cassidy. He needs to at least be that. I think you need to have him
at least the damn QT Marshall, like on the QT level.
QT to secure the pay-per-view match with Paul White.
Yes, QT got pay-per-view time, man.
I was listening to people talk about oh, I can't believe they had QT Marshall lose to the gun. Fucking QT Marshall, who cares, man? God damn. Like, he doesn't give a fuck.
This is no disrespect, even though it sounds disrespectful. This ain't no disrespect to QT, but it's like, come on, man. Like, you only have 3 hours of TV time a week, and you're telling me QT Marshall is more beneficial to your audience than highlighting somebody like a Sonny Kiss. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
I thought it was...
we keep it in the stack. Like, if we being real, Sonny Kiss is a way better wrestler than...
Yeah. I think QT Marshall, they were on to something when they hired him.
No, he does a lot of backstage stuff. Like
backstage stuff.
In his school, like the brother is beneficial to the company, but he shouldn't be taking up all this.
His gifts are not... the head of a stable, man. He's just not good in that role. I do not take him seriously. I don't think it's like a knock on him per se. I just think, when you make him the head of a stable, it kind of casts him in the wrong role.
Andrew, Chris said, we don't believe you. You need more people.
Really? Like, seriously, like why hasn't Anthony Ogogo did to him like what The Rock did to Farouk and the Nation? He's just not in the right role, in that. And I think that, when you see things like that, that does invite the caucasity criticisms, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, why is this dude all doing this? And Paul White needs to beat him fast, tall Paul, if you will. He needs to beat him fast, and we need to move on to your Anthony Ogogos, your Dante. QT Marshall should be there. He needs to be there, but he needs to be there like how the Brooklyn Brawler was there in WWE for all those years, where guys test their wrestling skills against. I mean, that was an important role.
So you say he like the first opponent on career mode,
right? Yeah, that was an important
match.
Yeah,
a Dolph Ziggler light, if you will.
Right, Dolph Ziggler very light because
I was gonna say they already kind of got Dolph Ziggler light on the roster, right. Real talk with his brother. So
yeah. It's just he's not. I just think that QT Marshall's best use is as a guy that teaches the young guys, because the guys that he's trained are good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he definitely is a great trainer. All jokes aside, laughing and stuff. QT is a great trainer because obviously he wouldn't be if he wasn't pushing out the talent that he was at the Nightmare Factory, like Lee Johnson, and I think they helping train Jade Cargill, and she's getting better every week and stuff like that. So firstly, shout out to QT. We just saying, like, if you could fit time for all these people, you could definitely find some time for Sonny Kiss. Like Nate, I think Nate had a great option out there with Sonny getting a TNT title match against Miro. I think that would be great. Miro has a lot of heat right now. I think a lot of people would get behind Sonny. So, I mean, it's all up to AEW, man. But our last story, before we get out of here, a positive one that had a few scary moments within it. Keith Lee went on to explain his absence from TV, and he had a very rough road this year. He contracted COVID. His significant other, fellow WWE superstar, fellow WWE talent, Mia Yim, she skipped out on the Royal Rumble to take care of Keith, and she contracted COVID as well, but it didn't affect her. Keith Lee, he had inflammation in his heart. He couldn't do anything but light walk. He feared, from his own words, he said he feared that one day he would wake up, and one day he wouldn't wake up. He had those concerns going through his head. It was really bad. And credit to WWE for noticing something off in Keith's blood work, because if they hadn't, as he said, he doesn't know what would have happened going forward. So yeah, they quite possibly saved that man's life. So yeah, Keith Lee has been doing dark matches for like the past 4 or 5 weeks. I'm assuming they're trying to get went back under his cell, like let him get comfortable back in the ring. But Nate just hearing that, man, and seeing what Keith and finally knowing what Keith has gone through over the past 8 months, man, I know we have been very critical of WWE and their booking of Keith Lee and not presenting him in the manner in which he should be presented for the type of talent that he is. But just, got to give their medical staff credit on catching this, because this could have been very, very bad and potentially fatal, as Keith said.
Yes, shout out to Keith Lee, man. Like, I think, you know, a lot of times we get caught up in what's going on the screen, which is part of, you know, that's part of our job, Andrew, is to talk about what these companies present. But at the end of the day, man, these are people. And so, you know, I'm glad that Keith Lee seems to be on that road to recovery. Shout out to Mia Yim for you know, being there for him. Like, that's huge. You know, I'm glad this story didn't end tragically, like so many other COVID stories have over the past year in America and around the world. I also think, Kris, this is a time where, you know, and this, you know, kind of ties back into what we were talking about off the top with Jamal. Like, you don't know how many days you got ahead of you.
Right.
So, particularly like if you're listening to this show, like, I'm profiling here, but I'm guessing you're probably a dude, and I'm guessing you're probably a dude at least in his late 20s, early 30s, maybe even older than that. And so take care of yourself, man. Get yourself checked out. I know nobody wants to go to the doctor, Andrew, but you gotta find out, man, of what's going on with your body, particularly now in this age of COVID, man. Like if you're over 40, like if you'd crossed 40, if you hit that Mike Gundy, Kris, I'm a man. I'm 40.
Right.
If you'd have crossed that barrier, you definitely need to be having at least yearly checkups, man. Particularly for our brothers out there, our black men. Like, get checked, man. Get you know, the exams and the screenings, because, you know, there's no guarantee that you're going to see the next day. So shout out to the training staff, man, and the medical staff for catching this. And I'm glad that, you know, our brother Keith is still with us, Kris.
Yeah, man. And health comes before anything else, man. It really does. It comes before all these, it comes before anything, man. Like money, women, cars, all that stuff, men, whatever.
Gold headphones.
Yeah. The health comes before anything, man. It just does. Because when it starts going away, that becomes what you like wish you had back. You know, like having multiple sclerosis is kind of, you know, messed me up in a lot of ways physically, and you know, you have those days where you're like, man, I wish I could still do this, or I wish I could still do that. So health has to come first. So I'm glad he's gotten that. And that comes before even the in-ring stuff. And it's good, like you said, Nate, that he had Mia Yim watching his back, you know what I'm saying?
She put her career on hold, man.
Yeah, you know, because it comes before anything. Health comes before anything. And that's how it should be. You know, you can worry about WWE and their boneheaded creative after that, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm sure that's on his mind as well. You know, I mean, at least they don't have him dressing up like the Gimp from Pulp Fiction, but I mean, you know, little things like that. But yeah.
Yes, shout out to Keith Lee, shout out to Mia Yim, and I'm glad that you know, that story, because it's been a story we've been talking about ever since the debut of Nubian Wrestling Advocates here on Post, Andrew. So thank you for bringing us that update, man.
No problem, man. That's going to conclude the news portion before y'all brothers get nitty and gritty with the man himself, Rich Fann.
Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Thompson brought you the news. Appreciate it, brother. Andrew, before we let you go, man, and before you got to deal with all these QT Marshall fans in your mention, what you got coming up, man, on the interview, the YouTube channel, and what you got going on here post wrestling, brother?
Of course, they can check out my written work at the post site. I will be recording with the man himself, W.H. Park, later. Going to do some post Perez. I'm very much looking forward to that. I recorded with one of our other good brothers, Sid, who was on the Nubian Wrestling Advocates very often. Great talking to him. And you can check out my interviews at the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel. A little teaser: I do have an interview set up with an individual who will be producing at tonight's NWA Empower All Women show. Okay, so you guys will all see that a wrestling legend. So I'm very much looking forward to putting that out. Hopefully the schedule is lined up like we planned, and we can push that out to the public. Good stuff, brother. Good stuff. Always good to have you come through and
enlighten us with this news, Andrew. We appreciate you, man. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to hearing all this work you got going on. And for those that missed it, because Andrew didn't promote it, but the latest edition of that Bushby and Thompson is out.
Yeah, for sure. We covered TakeOver New Orleans
with Chris's tag team partner. I ain't want to bring up old stuff. And, Martin Bushby had the audacity.
Oh yeah,
had the audacity to think that he was gonna get one over on me and my partner Eric by bringing Kris as the mystery tag team partner. But we see how that ended up. You still got your BDE tag team champions, Nate Milton, Eric Marcotte. Y'all know how it is. Kris tried, Andrew, but he couldn't get the job done.
Martin bought Kris in like Cain Velasquez and got squashed. See what happened? but that's what happened when you go against Kofi. You see what happens? Oh my goodness, man. Hey, no, I appreciate y'all having me on, man. It's a good time as always. And everybody enjoy the rest of the conversation.
No problem. Andrew Thompson, y'all. Yes, after that match, Kris definitely was calling for that SOS, man.
Look, I didn't understand how that game went at all, man. I answered all the goddamn questions.
Ain't nobody here for your excuses, Kris.
Yeah, I got all the questions right, and still ended up.
Look, Kris sitting here like Isaiah Thomas on The Last Dance. Like, I had all the qualifications, but for some reason I wasn't picked.
Kris out here acting like Bret Hart. Like somebody screwed him.
Oh, God.
Hey, look here, man. The BDE didn't screw Kris. Kris screwed Kris. All right, want to give a shout out to Andrew Thompson. He brought us the news like he does every month here on the Nubian Wrestling Advocates. But Kris, we got to go from talking about the news to giving our views on some big discussion points in the world of pro wrestling over the past month. And to do that, we need to bring on somebody for our panel. And this person, this brother, this gentleman, should be no stranger to the listeners out there, Kris. Because, in fact, he was on the first edition of the NWA podcast in the post-wrestling era. He is a friend of the program. You know this man from Pro Wrestling Torch. You know this man from MCU Later. You know this man from YouTube videos everywhere, Kris, because he is the reigning, defending, undisputed milk crate champion of the world. Y'all give it up for Rich Fann. Rich, what's good, brother?
Not much. Oh my God, you got me. I was like, YouTube? I haven't done YouTube video. He ain't trying to set me up, right? Oh, the milk crates. They got me.
Only hit the top. How you been, Rich, since the last time we talked to you a couple months ago here on the show?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Got to relax, spend some time this summer with my family. Got to see my folks for the first time in 2 years. Shot up, double shot, not shot up, double shots. And then, got to see them and looking forward to whatever's happening this fall with wrestling, man. I got to break my no wrestling till 2022 because my alma mater was kind enough to throw me in one of the boxes so I could be hermetically sealed while I watched the first Rampage here in Pittsburgh. So I'm ready to chop it up. And all the craziness from last weekend is definitely worth, or at least some specific things from last weekend are very, very front of mind right now.
Yes, and we will definitely want to talk more about your experience at AEW in our second topic this week. But before we get to that, Kris, people know if you've been following Kris on social media, you've been following me on social media, there's been one topic that has stood out above all others over the past few weeks. So why don't you let the people know what topic number one is, Kris, on the program?
Okay. Mama, there goes that man.
Shout out to Mark Jackson. Mama, there goes that man.
Our reaction to Becky Lynch's return and her title win over Bianca Belair at SummerSlam.
Yeah, man. Y'all knew we had to talk about it. Y'all knew we had to get into this. I gave some of my thoughts when John Pollock and Kate from Montreal and I did the SummerSlam post show here at Post Wrestling, but I want to dig even deeper into this. And Kris has, a analytical way to kind of look at the decisions behind what went on with Bianca Belair at SummerSlam. But before we get to the professor, I want to hear Rich's opinion because, Kris and I have talked about this. Rich and I have, kind of corresponded in our group chat about this a little bit. But I want the audience, Rich, to know your thoughts about what went down at SummerSlam, where we thought we were going to get Bianca versus Sasha, the rematch from WrestleMania. And Sasha could not compete, which the company knew about. And we ended up getting the surprise return of Becky Lynch and the surprise victory of Becky Lynch over Bianca in 26 seconds. Go ahead and speak on it, Rich Fann.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. First of all, I was always honored to be the first guest on the NWA. I'm honored that you guys are on post and bringing it. And so I think that's it. It's the fact that we got to see in 25 seconds, just like Kofi Kingston, just like Lashley's first run, which I think a lot of people forget about when he did his talk with Stone Cold that was conspicuous by its absence. It was it's time to go, the real stars are here treatment a lot of the particularly black acts get in WWE. Or the Booker T. Hey, we're going to get you on the other side, brother, when he's Triple H talking all that hard garbage about he's better than you and all that. So I think you have Bianca, who's a young woman who is exactly what they claim per Nick Khan they want. A non-wrestler, former athlete. You develop from the bottom. You don't have to worry about the indie traits that she's picked up. She's grateful for the company. She's ebullient. She's a star. And you crush her in 25 seconds because you can't handle the fact that the other company had somebody debut and you got to match it with a woman who's 2 months early than when she was supposed to be back. It's a mess. And you have Becky turn into Charlotte. Like, this is like you either die a hero or live long enough to be a villain in real time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, Rich, was, like, even if you want to take race out of it, okay? Let me put myself in the shoes of some of the people I've seen commenting about this the last few days and few weeks by the time this show airs. Let's take race out of it, man. Let's just look at it like wrestling, Rich. Even if we just look at this as a wrestling storyline, it's bad booking, man. Like, it doesn't help Becky. It doesn't help Bianca. So if we're just taking race out of this, which is very hard to do, why did they do this, man? Like, was it just a reactionary move to CM Punk coming back? Like who does this help?
Well, I've been seeing on Twitter, from that very group of folks, the Let It Play Out crowd, hey, Becky's going to lose it right back to her and go to Raw. And then now you have Bianca. But no, you don't have stars like this. And when people bring up, for example, Bryan Danielson, I'm not using his WWE name no more. That man's free. When Bryan Danielson lost in 8 seconds to Sheamus, that was supposed to get Sheamus over. So there's no way to turn this around and say you're trying to get Bianca Belair over by having her get beat that quickly and look like a chump. I mean, when you got Nikki Bella dropping fire on the red carpet after the show, talking about how she had no favorite moment for SummerSlam because she saw a woman who worked as hard as she did to get a championship just have it snatched away in seconds. Yep. And so I just don't see it as if I would say take your favorite wrestler and put them in that spot, regardless of race, if you say you don't see color or you don't think this is, and see how you react to it. And I think folks' opinions would change drastically.
Yeah, and I think, man, this reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from a movie that we've all seen, man, The Avengers. And there's a scene in The Avengers towards the end of the movie, Rich, where the World Defense Council, or whatever they call, decides to send a missile and aim it at New York City because they try to defeat the Chitauri threat. And Nick Fury is like, nah, man, we're not doing that. And Maria Hill's like, but Director Fury, the council has made a decision. And Nick Fury says, I recognize the council has made a decision, but given that it's a stupid-ass decision, I have elected to ignore it. And that's how I felt watching this, Kris, man. It's like the play out crowd. I love that that's kind of the moniker that we're going to, give these folks now, because it's like we've been here before, Kris. We've been here with Kofi. Like, even taking Kofi out of the equation, we've seen this time and time again over the years where the amount of goodwill that we've had for this company, for the WWE and their storytelling, dwindles year by year, month by month, week by week. And so, like, I would love to be wrong on this program. Like, full disclosure, we're recording this a week after SummerSlam. I would love, by the time this comes out, for this to be wrong. I would love for us all to look stupid here on this podcast. Sound like we're talking out the side of our necks. But what in their history, Kris, has given me any indication, any clue that they are going to make good on this story and be able to have Bianca stronger than she was before that SummerSlam match, man?
Yeah, that's a very good question because I don't know the answer to it. I've been on the riding on the let's see it play out train from WWE since easily 2011, probably 2009 when they screwed over Kofi Kingston the first time. I've been on this train of let's see it play out, and then just screw it over the Nexus, and just watching people time and time again get screwed over. There is no let's see it play out when it comes to WWE. They are who they are. We talked about the other day on your Place to Be Nation show about the different kinds of unconscious bias that exist in WWE. And
Let's set this up, Kris. Let's set this up. Again, Kris is going to break down. He's putting on his professor hat right now.
The abridged version.
Yes, the abridged version, because you can get the more detailed version, as Kris mentioned, on the latest edition of the Kings of Sport, as well as the chain reaction over at Place to Be Nation. But Kris, talk about the different types of unconscious bias and how it relates to what the WWE did at SummerSlam with Bianca Belair.
All right, so there's like hundreds of different kinds of unconscious bias that exists out there. For the sake of this discussion and for what I do for a living, which is diversity training, verse people in the kind of biases they might have, I'm just going to stick to 6. So we talked about the affinity bias, which means you're basically biased towards people that share a similarity with you. So when I was in college, different frats like the Q Dogs, Alphas, it doesn't matter. They were all like, join this frat because when you graduate and stuff, you'll be able to find a job because we got people do this and that. That's an affinity bias when someone says, hey, you're a Q Dog, let's do our secret handshake or whatever. That's an affinity bias. It's applicable to race as well. We talked about the halo effect, where you see a certain type of person and they are the ideal of what is perfection to you or what's close to perfection to you. We talked about the horns effect, where it's the exact opposite of the halo effect, where the horns effect is that person is what you see as evil, not based on any sort of facts or whatever. And I gave the example of me going on a date with this girl, a blind date, and because she had the same perfume that my ex had, I didn't want to date her again. It wasn't anything that she did wrong, but the horns effect was prevalent and real in that situation. And then we talked about the attribution bias, where you attribute certain qualities to certain people. In the case of Bianca Belair, you job her out because you are used to someone like her, and we'll insert what your someone like her is in, but is used to kind of working her way up and crawling her way up. So she'd be able to handle losing in 25, 26 seconds better than somebody else, And we talked about how in the case of with John Cena, they would never do something like this with him because of what the biases that they've attached to him. And then we talked about confirmation bias, and that bias is more the tendency to kind of take in information about a group that only feeds your narrative. So there's a lot of that in WWE, where we always constantly talk about, the most common 5 stereotypes they do with blacks and just that kind of thing. It's you already got a confirmation bias on blacks. So if the black guy you're seeking to hire doesn't fit any of these preconceived notions you have about them, then you're not going to hire them. And then we talked about we didn't talk about this. We talked about the anchoring bias. The anchoring bias is you have one notion of somebody, and just based on that first bit of information that you got on them, you have a bias either for or against them. Like if I read some bullshit on the vaccine that said that, it was poisonous, what I'm going to do after that is just look up more information that feeds that bias that I already have anchored to it.
And I hope everybody's out there taking notes, because Kris just gave us a course for free. Like Professor just broke it down for free. And Rich, so when you think about all of those biases, man, and the way that it kind of relates back to how you craft the story and how you present a character to the audience, and in this case, how you tell the Bianca Belair story, it just seems very egregious to me, man, in the way that, like, there wasn't any other way that you could have told this story. Like, there was no reason, at least in my opinion, to do this match, right? This is something you could have built up. This is something that we should have been spending weeks on, and we get to Extreme Rules, and then you could have the match. And that could actually main event Extreme Rules, because I don't know any of the other matches that they got planned for Extreme Rules, Rich. But instead, we have this. And this is like a situation where the immediate reaction was just so divisive, where you had that let it play out contingent, but you also had a loud and large contingent of the people, Rich, that night saying, like, what the hell is this? Like, why did y'all do this to Bianca? Especially, Rich, after they spent so much time building her up, had that historic main event at WrestleMania, sent her and Sasha Banks to the ESPYs, man. Mm-hmm. Like, you do all that just to tear her down, so theoretically you can tell the story of building her back up again.
Yeah, but she wasn't I would argue she wasn't built up enough to be torn down yet.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You had an act that was on its way up. If anything, you said, how could they could have done it different. When we did the Tours Roundtable, the first thing I thought of was the old tried and true method of what we just saw with Sasha that they did over the course of an episode leading into this match. Becky comes to save her, and then you have a tag match.
Yep.
And the people still happy. Okay, Sasha's not there. They're disappointed a little bit on that, but they're more happy that Becky's back. Becky's raising the arm of Bianca Belair, and you have two people, and you could have the little, raise the title, and then you got the forlorn look of Becky looking at it as she's congratulating her partner, and off you go. But instead, it's going to be this thing on Friday of how do you explain out of this, and if it's going to be turning her heel, her being Becky, what are you doing? Because there isn't another. You just cut the legs out of the face that was going to be there to replace her in that role if you let her grow. So it's just very asinine that they did.
And nobody wants to boo her. Like, nobody wants to boo the woman that just came back from pregnancy, Rich.
No. Well, they didn't want to boo her husband when he came back from knee injury. And first thing they did was tell him, well, you guys didn't like me when I was on my knee, and you saw my documentary, and I hate you all. I was like, what do you mean? Your documentary showed how much you love pro wrestling, how much you couldn't get back, and how you thought the fans were few. Like, they do not understand how people work unless you're a craven, win-at-all-costs individual.
And it goes back again to how much faith do you have in this company. And there's been people that I've listened to the past week, Rich, people that I respect, like people that I have trust in with their opinions when it comes to this business, people in some cases that I would consider, friends or at least friendly. And I just don't see it. I just don't see where they're coming from with this wait and see, let the story play out attitude. Because let's take this in a different context. Everybody's got a job, Rich. Everybody's got a boss. And it doesn't matter where you work, whether you work for the newspaper, whether you work at a restaurant, whether you work at a grocery store, everybody's got a boss. And say when you first start out, you've been there a year. Your boss comes to you one day and says, hey, Rich, you're doing a good job, man. I'm going to give you a promotion and a raise. You're like, oh, hell yeah. A couple weeks later, you don't get the promotion or the raise. You're like, okay, maybe something happened in HR. Maybe he promised me something he couldn't deliver. That's okay. I'm cool. I'm still going to do my job. Cut to the next year, Rich. Boss man comes up. Hey, Rich, man, I love what you're doing, brother. I'm going to give you a promotion and a raise. Okay, cool. Like, it's going to happen this time. I'm here for it. Turns out it doesn't happen again. You're like, okay, this doesn't feel right, but I'm still going to do my job because I take pride in my work, Rich. Next year, boss man comes up. Hey, Rich, you're doing a great job, brother. Guess what? Talk to HR. You're in line for a promotion and a raise. You're not going to believe this, man. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, Rich. When people tell you who they are, you ought to believe them. And the WWE, at least in my opinion, has told me, A, we don't know how to write stories for women. You could see that, if you look over at the Raw program with Charlotte, Rhea, and Nikki, like that story was a complete mess. B, you really don't know how to write for people of color. And C, you definitely don't know how to write for baby faces, like good, believable, organic baby faces. Like people bring up Daniel Bryan. People bring up Kofi Kingston. Those were not creations of the company. Those were things the company lucked into. So what evidence have they given me, Rich? What evidence have they given you that they can tell this story the right way?
Honestly, they haven't. I listened this week at the suggestion of Brian Alvarez to the pre-SmackDown promo Paul Heyman gave before the Invasion pay-per-view, the Survivor Series, that last battle between the Alliance and the WWE. And Paul Heyman gave a promo where in 7 minutes you could drop that now and every word is valid. The best successes were people that Vince McMahon took from other companies. His best moves were taking things from other companies like Attitude Era. I just take ECW, call it Attitude Era. Yeah. I take Hulk Hogan from AWA and I say I discovered him. So this is par for the cross, and this is I'm very disappointed. Especially, I'm in the same boat as you, Nate, and I'm sure Kris, where you have people who you'd say friendly. I think that's fair, or even friends, and you have to accept that they're not seeing it the same way we are when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
And when you try to explain it, I try to explain it like, okay, if you want to think about how angry I am with Bianca, and if you don't think this is something that's right, think about WrestleMania 9. What reason, when Bret Hart lost to Yokozuna, did Hulk Hogan have to not only interject himself into the match, but to then win the title? Like, what did that make? Did that make sense? It didn't. It just served the greater narrative of they didn't want Bret Hart with the belt.
Yep.
So let's get the belt off Bret Hart. And I just think as you go through these journeys and you look at these people writing, I made the observation with Travis yesterday on the East Coast cast. Charlotte Flair is very proud of the fact she's agenting matches now and has agented. Her point of pride was Rhea Ripley this year. I would say Rhea Ripley has not had the best year.
Nope.
But that's what happens when you fire, outside of TJ, the other coaches / agents that had been working with the women. You now have a top performer who has to be your agent. And how does that work? You know what I mean? It's just, it's all messed up. And when you have Dana Warrior as your voice of the female fan on that writing team, I don't think things are getting put together the way they need to be.
No, and I said this on the post show on that Saturday night, Chris. It's like Bomani Jones says, man. It's a two American situation where two groups of people can look at the same event and have a different opinion of it, man. And it's like, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with Rich. You don't have to agree with Chris. But I do feel like you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't listen to somebody. Like, there's people out here, like, just like bringing the real world into this conversation, like with what's going on in Afghanistan right now. Like, I have a kind of cursory knowledge of the situation, but there are people who are from that region who I'm friends with. And they are saying things that might not jive with my opinion, but I'd be stupid, Chris, if I didn't at least listen to them and see what their experience is. And I feel like that's part of the frustration. And I can hear it a little bit when Rich was talking right there. Part of the frustration with being, somebody black in this space, being a female in this space, being somebody other than a straight white man in this space is that not only do you have to work hard to get your voice heard, but you have to work twice as hard to get people to believe you, or at least listen to your opinion without automatically kind of shutting you down.
Yeah, and it's and that's the thing about unconscious bias too, is unconscious bias is not overtly racist, but the behaviors from unconscious bias could lead to overt racism, right? And WWE has just a very sordid history of doing this thing. Like, I remember when Miro, what was his WWE name again? Rusev, yeah. When he first debuted in WWE, like, every dude they put in front of him so they could build up Rusev was a black guy. They had him, like, squash Kofi, squash Big E, squash.
I know Titus had to be on that list.
Yeah, I think he was. Like, he squashed all these guys, and I honestly do not think that the company was probably thinking in terms of race, but what they thought about were who are the most expendable guys on this roster, and all of them just happen to be black. And there's nobody on that writing staff or nobody in that company that can say, hey, do you know how this looks, how optically this could be kind of bad for us to do? This guy is just running through black guys before he runs through anybody else. And it just, the only thing that can make sense to people like us is this is a racial thing. And it's just, you're right about how many times can you, like, wait to see it play out when you've been doing this with these people for years and years, and it just keeps happening. And the thing about it too is you also get situations where blacks will just get kind of punished worse for, like, when you're a black guy amongst the sea of white people, if you're the only black employee there or one of the few only black employees there, you really do kind of bite your tongue because you don't want to be the unruly black woman or black guy. So you just kind of go with the flow, because the minute you say something that's out of pocket, you're looked at as a troublesome or a problem person. And I think that it's just this, like, I just don't like that in 2021, someone like a Bianca Belair is looked at as, oh, she'll be fine. We'll just job her in 25, 26 seconds, and she'll be able to take it. It's like, it's just another burden on top of this woman, that another cross she has to bear.
Yeah, and then the other thing, like, getting back to that wait and see attitude, Rich, like, if I going back to the work analogy, like, if you come into work late every single day, the onus is not on the company to be like, well, maybe Rich will be on time today. Like, no, the onus is on you to get to work on time, dog. And so it's like the people that are like, oh, just give it a chance, Nate. Like, nah, that's not my job anymore. Like, you had the benefit of the doubt. Now you got to show me something. Act like I'm from Missouri. You got to show me that you're about the business of telling this story. And so kind of spinning it forward, this is where we can kind of end off on the Bianca topic, y'all. Where do they go? Like, where do you think they will go? Where do you want them to go with this story if the reports are true and Becky is back as a heel and Bianca is the baby face that has to rebound from what happened at SummerSlam, Rich?
I think the biggest thing for her to rebound is they're going to have an ironclad story that shows she's on the ascent, and they have to do it in a way that doesn't look like she's the corporate person that's been placed in Becky's way. That's the only way they can do this, which means if the rumors are true and she is going to go to Raw, great, God bless. But if she's going to be on SmackDown, there better be a way they figure out that Becky exists in a world that Bianca is starting to run. Because if there's any other outcome, she's always going to be seen as the also-ran. She's always going to be seen as the female version of Kofi. Because if we see her on Friday, tomorrow, and she is just ho-hum about this, she just plays it off and moves on to, I want to make a tag team, or she's just going to focus on working on getting the Street Profits back in the tag team scene. That's going to that's it right there. And to talk about, like Kris was talking about with unconscious bias, you think about the Rusev example and you think about this example, they see it isn't overt racism that's going to get them to having their black wrestlers as the people put in the situation. It's the fact that their black wrestlers are perennially in that low spot of the card or the expendable spot, and they don't see it as picking the black people, I'm picking the expendable people, which happen to be the same people. And you need someone to tell you that. And someone that isn't going to be, unfortunately, someone like a Booker T, who is more willing to say hot takeism on his shows than he is to yell truth to the true power in this situation.
Yeah, because, and again, like, no disrespect to Booker's career, but we know what it's about. We know what the game is. The bag right now is what is important. So, Kris, like, where does she go, man? Because, like, not only do you have the problem of the women and the storytelling for the women, like I mentioned earlier, but just in general, if we are taking race out of this, like, they don't know how to build good baby faces these days, man. We've seen it. So what would you do if they came to you and said, Kris, we hear you an educated brother, man. Like Nana called and said, you need to hire Christopher? What if they came to you, Kris, and said, what do we need to do to fix this story? What would you tell them?
I would just, because there's no way you can undo what you already did on Saturday, right? It's just kind of one of those things. My advice would just simply be better and do better, and this is another problem that I have with the internet wrestling community sometimes is with these black wrestlers that the go-to thing with all of them is turn them heel. You know what I'm saying? Especially like with Bianca, it's like, okay, well, maybe now they could turn her heel. It's like, why do you need to do that? This one was a role model to black girls and boys. She was a role model to everybody, but she's going to resonate with black girls. You don't do that to John Cena. They never did stuff like nonsense like that to, the people that they really care about in that position. And that's where the unconscious bias comes in. It's like with John Cena, you'd probably get fired if you even suggested, let's turn John Cena heel for no fucking reason other than, we did this botch of a storyline with them, so let's just turn them. They care so much about keeping John Cena pure, white bread, milquetoast babyface that even after this guy hasn't been wrestling full-time with that company since pretty much 2017, they still treat him with a degree of reverence that they just don't treat anybody else with. And there's no black person in the history of that company that they will ever do that with. Not in the past and not in the future. It just is what it is.
Then, now, and forever.
Right. Yeah.
And to your point, let me just drop some numbers for you. King Kong Bundy defeated Special Delivery Jones, 23 seconds.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan defeats Yokozuna, 22 seconds. Sheamus Daniel Bryan 18. Kofi Kingston defeats Brian Kendrick 11 seconds. Brock Lesnar beats Kofi 8 seconds. Diesel beats Bob Backlund 8 seconds. Like, this is something where, like I said before, it's going to be where you are on the card or what they think of you, and it's going to be irrespective of race. Like, Brian Kendrick wasn't getting thrown in with the black people. He just got beaten because they had a storyline they wanted to focus on in terms of the King trying to, at the time, trying to distract him because he was trying to do whatever stupid thing. I can't remember the full storyline for that back then. Yeah. But the one I remember, we just talked, the Yokozuna one, that's exactly with 22 freaking seconds. Yeah. You had a Samoan dude playing a Japanese guy. How out of pocket was Yokozuna?
Come on. Yo, and Kris hit on something that I didn't even think about it, Rich, but now that he said it, I can't unthink it. Like, if I had $1 for every time I saw somebody say, when talking about Big E and his ascent up the card, Big E needs to turn heel. That's what'll make him a main eventer. Like, come on, man. Like, this dude should be, for lack of a better term, Rich, because I can't think of one right now, he should be Black John Cena for this generation.
Yeah.
He's a dude that's personable. He's a dude that relates to your younger audience. Like, he's somebody you can put on Jimmy Kimmel. He's somebody you can put on Good Morning America. Like, this dude should be selling all the merch and doing all the Make-A-Wishes. Like, for him to be healed, like, to get to that next level, it makes no sense from a business standpoint, but that's always kind of the go-to. Like, if Biggie were healed, he'd be a main eventer. Like, nah, he shouldn't have to. Same with Bianca. Like, in this storyline with Becky, man. Like, I've heard people say, like, Bianca should be the one that turns heel. For what? For who?
Yeah. Like, I would ask wrestling fans that where that's their go-to with these black wrestlers to just stop and think about why they are suggesting that you do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember even with someone like a Sasha Banks, like, people were just like, it just jumping on, and it seemed like a trope to me. I could be wrong. I could be overly sensitive, but it was like, yeah, she's just more natural of a bad guy or something. I'm listening to this shit, like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? You know, it's a problem for me. You know, and it wouldn't be a problem if they didn't. If I just, and this could be my own racial sensitivity. So I'm not even trying to.
Here's the thing, because I didn't want to say it, Rich. I felt like Kris is stepping on my toes a little bit right there, because I do kind of think Sasha's a better natural heel than a babyface. And maybe that's due to the writing and not to her. But it's felt like every time she's been a heel, the character pops more than when they make her a babyface.
I think for me, it's my natural inclination as a New Yorker to hate Boston accents. So the longer she talks as a babyface, the more I'm like, nah.
Yeah, the reason why I would hate her is because she's a California transplant that adopted Boston as her hometown, and that's just always going to be on my S list as an LA guy. But
so we came to a consensus. Like, the one thing we can all agree on is Sasha Banks is a heel for various reasons. But
right, yeah, I just wish that, like, I just think that her lack of creativity just causes. Or not her lack of creativity, but the company's
the lack of the creative they give her.
Yeah, I think it just makes people automatically lean on turning her heel. Even other black people. I think that we have been conditioned to think that about her. I think we've been conditioned to think that about a lot of black people. Let's
stay here for a second, Kris. Let's stay here for a second, because going back to the Sasha Bianca feud that led up to WrestleMania, like, the match was amazing. Like, the match was, to me, the match of the show. But that story, it felt like they did not know how to differentiate these two black women, Rich. Like, it felt like variations on a theme with the characterization of Bianca and Sasha. And so the story never resonated with me, even though the match was amazing.
Yeah. I know, talking with Wade, you know, as a black voice, the thing I love about the Torch is we have several black folks, several folks of color, we had several women, but, lost some. Prayers to my girl M, who's doing grit and glitter on her own Patreon tip. But I think being able to talk to Wade as a white dude in Minnesota and just say, you know, sometimes the things that might be seen as cockiness from Bianca is just her using athletic arrogance and her just being a young black woman in 2021. It isn't that she's being a heel, or isn't that she's like turning people off. It's that you have to be open to the possibility that that's a personality trait and not over-exaggerated Vince McMahon caricature of a black woman. And the problem is, like you said, you have two black women, and then you fall into the Michael P.S. Hayes trap of, okay, what's the gimmick for these black women? There's too many gimmicks. They're already black and women. So it's so when you got to the end,
gimmick on a gimmick, brother.
Right. Get hat on a hat. And so when you got to the end of that feud and you get to the moment and they're happy and they're on ESPN and they're winning ESPYs and they're on Good Morning America, and I see Bianca on the NFL Network talking about winning and her role in history, they can then hop in and be like, ha-ha, we have a black we can highlight. And then when you have the match again, it's like, which one's the bad guy? I don't know how to speak their language. It's like, well, how about you clear the lane, maybe not fire the black woman comedian that you hired, and let her talk to these women and figure out a common ground.
So I guess what we're all saying in various ways, Chris, is we hoping for the best, man, but we not expecting it, man, because we've been down this road before. Like, hopefully they find a way to unfumble the bag with Bianca. Like, they fumbled the bag. The money's on the floor. Hopefully they can pick most of the money up, put it back in the bag, and get Bianca back to where she needs to be, man.
Yeah, for me, with just it's just a constant thing with WWE. I can't. They've lost the benefit of the doubt with me a long time ago. You know, just with the stuff they've constantly continued to do with Kofi. What they've done, like just certain things that just never made any sense to me. You know, it's like, and I'm just trying to, and that's the thing too. I'm done trying to understand it from their point of view. And now there's another wrestling company that I can watch, where I don't have to just kind of take this stuff with WWE. And AEW has its own set of issues. We've talked about it on this show, but they're not completely devoid of the benefit of the doubt with me like WWE is at the moment.
Yeah. Well, speaking of AEW, speaking of your boy TK in the building, Chris, let's go ahead and pivot to topic number 2, man. What is topic number 2 for the people?
Topic number 2 is Punk's jump up to get beat.
Punk's jump up to get beat down. Shout out to Brand Nubian.
Yeah, I love that song. Thoughts on CM Punk's AEW debut and what this means for AEW and the business as a whole.
Oh yeah. So CM Punk, like, SummerSlam should have been the highlight of the weekend, Rich Fann. But they had a little bit of their thunder stolen the night before, Friday night. AEW Rampage. CM Punk in Chi-Town made his return, set Twitter ablaze, launched 1,000 think pieces and 1,000 podcasts after Rampage. 1 million people watched that show, Rich Fann. And so CM Punk, now that we've had the chance to see him on Dynamite and see, hear him talk about his decision behind coming back to wrestling and coming back to AEW specifically. What did you make of the debut, Rich? And what do you make of what Punk means for AEW going forward?
I thought it was a masterful debut. I really enjoyed AEW releasing the producer side of it after the fact, where you can see how well and how hard it was for them to get shot, go to 10, go to 10, wipe to 6. And
that was awesome.
It was just magnificent. And him, he was just so natural. I mentioned yesterday to my buddy Travis, I loved the fact that he just soaked it all in and went with the crowd. And it's an illustration, and you mentioned the rating. It's another illustration of a lot of folks, when it comes to this WWE, AEW, or WWE versus the world, essentially, they don't take account of the fact that there are people who like certain wrestlers and want to see those people do well. And then Punk comes, you get another 300,000 people, 400,000 people watch, and the refrain is, well, why didn't he get more? And it's like this constant movement of the goalposts, and it's like what people aren't watching wrestling now or wouldn't watch AEW before, but they're going to watch now because of CM Punk. So you just answered your own question. There are people out there that don't like the Young Bucks. There are people out there, gasp, that don't like Kenny. But there are people who love themselves some CM Punk, love themselves some Bryan Danielson, and will watch those guys in their natural habitat and get to work with people who treat them like valued members of the team as opposed to irritants they have to placate a part of their audience to keep on screen.
Yeah.
And look no further than the fact that he did his post-show post-show scrum with the media, and he's talking about, his excitement to be an AEW, player, so to speak. And then in the lead up to Dynamite this week, he's saying, we're coming to Milwaukee. That dude never said we when he was in WWE. He was like, I'm going to be in Milwaukee, and these fools going to come with me. And so you got to take a stock of that. And I think it was great, and I think it's great for him. I think it's great for wrestling. I told Wade last week on The Torch that it is CM Punk was the proto him, Danielson, a lot of those Ring of Honor guys, especially because Tony Khan's a fan that watched ECW, watched these tapes, watched these shows. Mm-hmm. He's a proto AEW guy. Like, he was an AEW guy before there was an AEW. He's a good wrestler. He connects with the audience. He has an ethos. And when you see that, and, some people think he's, there's like, oh, you can't be, straight edge, or, oh, this guy's just putting on an act. It's like, well, guess what? It's still pro wrestling. So you're telling me you're willing to believe all this other crap about these other wrestlers, but now CM Punk's too fake for you? Like, that, he lost a fight in UFC. Oh, let me point to Brock. That dude lost quite a few fights before he won. Mm-hmm. And y'all, nobody got a problem with him rocking through like Yukon Cornelius throwing people around.
Yo, here's the thing, Chris, and I'll put my cards on the table because we tell the truth on the Nubian Wrestling Advocates. I was never the biggest fan of CM Punk. Like, I respected the dude's talent, thought he was a hell of a promo, but like CM Punk wasn't my jam, so to speak, when he was in the WWE. But even I got caught up in the moment of his debut on Rampage. From the minute they start playing Cult of Personality, shout out to Living Color. And he comes out, and as Rich is saying, soaks up that moment, dives into the crowd. We see grown people crying, and goes in there and just cuts a hell of a promo, man, connects with the audience, understands the moments, right? Understands the magnitude of the moment. I thought they did everything perfectly with his debut. And even going forward to Dynamite, I thought they did a great job with his first interview on Dynamite. The rest of the show around him was a little suspect, but so far with Punk, they've been hitting it on all cylinders. So what did you make of Punk's debut and what it means for AEW, man?
Yeah, it's like for CM Punk's debut, to find something wrong with it, you really just have to look for nits and just pick the fuck out of them. Because it was definitely one of the greatest debuts, re-debuts, whatever you want to call it, from a wrestler that I've ever seen. Like you said, shout out to Living Color. I've been a Living Color fan since I first saw them when I was in third grade, something like that. Open Letter to a Landlord.
Yeah, man.
Arsenio.
Yes, Arsenio.
Hall appearance. Funny Vibe. Just so many different.
Glamour Boys.
Glamour Boys. Yes. It's just so many different things. So I'm happy that Punk is able to bring those guys back to the forefront like he did in 2011. Yeah. And I think that, when I saw that Rampage debut from CM Punk, I was happy to be a wrestling fan. And even though I was pissed the next day at SummerSlam on Sunday, I was just online, just constantly looking for CM Punk stuff, like see what people were saying about him, like what was the overall thought on this guy coming to AEW. I think that, and the one thing I loved about his promo, one of the things that I didn't like, first of all, I loved when when Goldberg came back. What was it, circa 2015, 16, something like that. When he came back, I thought that was an incredible run by Goldberg. But one of the things that he kept on doing that got on my nerves a little bit was he kept on, like, putting the onus of his comeback on his son. Like, I came back so my son could see me wrestle and stuff. And not that I'm not saying that wasn't part of it, but come on, dude. If they were offering you, like, chump change, you wouldn't be coming that back. Let's just call it what it is. I like when Punk said, I'm back for the fans. I also admitted I'm back for myself, because I thought that just added a level of genuosity. I've heard people falsely saying that he apologized to the fans. He didn't apologize. He did a make good. He didn't apologize because he didn't need to apologize. He said, I understand you, but also understand me when I say I wasn't going to, heal in the place that I was at. And then people took it to mean WWE. I took it to mean WWE, but I also think I heard plenty of interviews with this guy talk about his mental space when he left WWE. So I also took it to mean the mental place that he was at. So, it was funny listening to someone like a Booker T and Booker T's not somebody that I give a lot of credence to his opinions. And the reason why I don't is because, like, someone called him Wrestling Stephen A. Smith. I don't think that's accurate, because I do think that even though I don't agree with Stephen A. Smith a lot of the time, I do think Stephen A. Smith's thoughts are genuine and coming from himself. I will never accuse Stephen A. Smith of nitpicking. That's one thing I won't do. I think Booker T, I think his goal is to go out there and just say the most heinous shit he could say so people can be talking about him. For me, after a while, it just kind of loses its luster. It's like different, and then people were coming at R-Truth today, because I guess R-Truth had a hot take on CM Punk and he didn't like his attitude. But when R-Truth says it, it means a little bit more, because R-Truth isn't somebody that's like just constantly just doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, like, look, for the record, like, there will be no Uncle Truth slander here. On the NWA podcast. Like, I got all the respect.
And even with R-Truth, with his take, it was more so like he talked about Punk complaining about the Awesome Truth having to take a back seat to those guys. So it was like, hey, this guy talked about me first. I was never impressed by him. That's what R-Truth's response was. That's reasonable. When you're just out there fucking lying just for the sake of lying, or spinning these bullshit narratives just so you can have a narrative to spin, and all this clickbaity shit, and talking about how progressive WWE is as opposed to AEW. It's laughable. And, Punk did what he was supposed to do. I didn't love what they did on Wednesday, and it wasn't Punk, it was the overall show. I think you follow up, that Rampage show should have been followed up with your best shit. Like, if I'm watching Rampage for the first time, I'm seeing Cassidy with his hands in his pockets, I'd have been turned off by now.
Like, that was arguably, I don't know how you feel about it, Rich. Like, that to me was arguably one of the worst Dynamites. Like, it wasn't like atrocious, but like, that's how you follow up CM Punk's debut with this this mid-level, this average Dynamite.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, I think when you look at CM Punk and you compare him with R-Truth, I mentioned like whether he's happy or sad, CM Punk's always going to be an ornery guy, so he's not going to be for everybody in the back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And when you catch somebody like an R-Truth in the wrong mood, like you were saying, it's fair for him to push back when he was like, I didn't want to lose. And really, he shouldn't take it as him, because the awesome truth was real. I've seen. I just mentioned that last night. I'm sorry, podcast is starting to bleed in. This afternoon, I was talking about one of my favorite retro changes for a wrestler was when he went from K-Quick to Ron the Truth Killings in NWA / Impact / TNA, whatever. And I love that. And he had that edge. And 3 Live Crew kind of did what the Awesome Truth did. But The Miz, we've never seen The Miz as like a seriously dangerous guy. Right. Because no one ever sees him as a dangerous guy. But I get Ron saying, hey, nah, man, you can't be coming at me. On the other token, with CM Punk, I think that Dynamite really served 2 things. To Chris's point about unconscious bias, I thought about, would we ever see a black Orange Cassidy?
Ooh. That's a great question, because we've seen black comedy acts, but Orange Cassidy is more than a comedy act for AEW.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Orange Cassidy is a guy that does comedy, but they take his wrestling seriously in a way that, like with Truth, like I love Truth, man. Like let's put the Truth cards on the table. Let's tell the truth, because I think some of the best WWE comedy over the last 20, 25 years has been done by this brother. Like going back, one of my favorite Monday Night Raw segments was when Truth was in my home state of Virginia.
Oh yeah,
coming out in the Confederate Guard and said he was seceding from the WWE. Rich, like that's an amazingly creative segment, but nobody ever really took Truth as this serious, credible threat in the way that we've seen Orange Cassidy go toe to toe with Chris Jericho.
Right. And the closest we did was when that was one of my favorite moments for the Awesome Truth, where they messed up the title cage match and waited for the Capitol Police to arrest them and just laid down. And that was such a moment, but we never followed up on it again because the people, powers that be, didn't see those guys that way. And so we could not see them that way on the screen.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, because I personally wouldn't be able to buy a black Orange Cassidy, and that says a lot about myself, as well as it does about the wrestling companies, because I haven't been conditioned in that way to take somebody black doing that as serious, and I think a lot of us are like that. We kind of have these own tropes about blacks that WWE has put into our heads about them, that's just one thing that needs to be cleaned up about the wrestling business. I think to an extent, AEW has those same tropes about blacks existing in the way they book, and I'm hopeful that they're kind of getting out of that. And I think CM Punk is a good person for that could help out a lot of the black talent that he's already said that he wanted to work with. I remember CM Punk when they asked him how he felt about the Kofi Kingston thing, and he said, "Oh, I liked it, but they should have did this 10 years ago." And people were getting on his case for saying that. That's true. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I got what he was saying behind that. It was like, okay, yeah, it's something to be happy about. Better late than never, I suppose. But you guys should have did this shit in 2009, and it's a fact. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't have to he should have been in the title picture for much longer than he was there for. But yeah, CM Punk, man, he was just it hit on every cylinders Friday night.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know that somebody's out there listening, man. Maybe they turned off the podcast by now, but they're like, how did they turn this CM Punk topic into a racial topic? And to that, question Rich, I will point to the name of the podcast and say, we have been upfront and forthright about what we talk about, what our positions are. And my last thing on Punk, man, like, I think he is a boon for AEW. He's a boon for the business, right? We've seen interest in NWA, interest in ROH, interest in some of these indies rise over the past couple weeks because of CM Punk. The rising tide lifts all boats. But one thing I want to see, man, is who's the black CM Punk? Because I think CM Punk is very skilled, right? You know, like I said, the brother can wrestle, the brother can talk, the brother hit at the right time. But who's to say there weren't 3 or 4 black dudes in the back that couldn't have been CM Punk, or a Latino cat that couldn't have been CM Punk, or an Asian cat that couldn't have been CM Punk? And so I think part of the ongoing struggle is that opportunity, because CM Punk, yes, he had to fight and claw and scratch to get to where he got, Rich, but there's a dozen other CM Punks that we'll never know of that didn't have the opportunity to even scratch and scrape and claw to get to that spot, man.
I think about 3 people right off the top of my head from that era. Homicide, Jimmy Yang, and that era of just thinking before he became the Macho Man. Back when he was just out of being Hydro in Special K, if you remember that, Jay Lethal.
Yes.
Like, those are people who really could have had that shot from Ring of Honor, and they just never got it. And I think with CM Punk, the one thing I liked about him was that he's an ally. When he did that fateful picture with Kofi and all the quote-unquote new generation with the championships, he was always advocating for everybody back there. It wasn't just here are my people. It was I'm pulling for all of us. Yep. And especially with Triple H and his mindset of what they wanted. And it's so funny, him coming back now as Triple H is on his descent is such a word in terms of just reading that whole situation, because he fought for years being called skinny fat and I don't think he's got it, babe, and all the other stuff that he would talk about. Triple H's face. I mean, think about the last conversation he had when they told him a match with Triple H at WrestleMania is like a main event.
Yeah.
There isn't a black person that's like Triple H. So, in terms of a person that could be like CM Punk, I think as a black dude, Asian, Latino, any person of color, the next CM Punk would be infinitely already behind the 8 ball because of those stumbling blocks. For me personally, right now, if they gave him a shot nationally, and I have mentioned him to Tony Khan, along with when I mentioned my boy Lee Moriarty, Darius Lockhart.
Okay.
Right,
yep.
yeah.
You put him on Dynamite and you let him do his vignettes in black and white and produce him himself, just like Darby did and all these other guys produced their own segments. I guarantee he'll get over, and he will bring you a level of fan that you haven't seen yet. And you will have it because you're going to have to lean into his gimmick and his truths, which are going to be hard truths to hear, face or heel.
And it just, again, like you mentioned in Lee Moriarty, man, and that just brings to mind so much talent that we have right now. You know, young talent that's been around for a minute. You know, like thinking about the Darius Lockharts, or you know the Sugar Dunkertons, the Black Jesus of the world. Billy Dixon, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think Billy Dixon is prime and ready. Like, if somebody would take that opportunity. And so, bringing it back to CM Punk, my big hope with Punk is twofold. One, that he continues to bring eyeballs to AEW. But then B, and maybe more importantly for the purposes of this show, Rich, is that CM Punk makes good on his word. And he's somebody that can not only go out there and have a great match with a Darby Allin, but he's somebody that can elevate a Powerhouse Hobbs. He's somebody that can elevate, you know, a Sammy Guevara. You know, he's somebody that can elevate some of these other brothers who are ready. You know, Ricky Starks, man. Like, Ricky Starks and CM Punk. That's a main event money feud right there, man. And I hope that in addition to lifting up the company, CM Punk is able to lift up some of these brothers who might not have had that opportunity, if not for an advocate, you know, the word of the day, if not for an ally in somebody like Punk.
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons I was happy Mark Henry signed with the company is for a guy like Hobbs, you need a bigger black man to teach you how to work that style and kind of make it good for everybody. Because I think there's certain things that maybe you're talking to Dustin Rhodes, Dustin's not going to pick up on that Mark would, depending on the town you're in. I think when we're dealing with a CM Punk, he's going to be able to talk to a Ricky Starks like he was cool with Kofi. Like he was cool with he was cool with everybody back there. He might have been ornery. If he's in a mood, you might not want to mess with him. But he's going to be there to help. And I think, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but I think same thing with Danielson. I always joke with Travis on the East Coast cast. The thing I enjoyed most about the Table for Threes is that WWE didn't really police him a lot. Mm-hmm. So people would just be talking about stuff, and you'd get a lot of their real personalities that sneaks through. And in particular, Daniel Bryan's, that is, when he did it with Dolph Ziggler and Ryback as the Intercontinental Champions. Hearing him Ryback talk about how Daniel Bryan bullies him and just makes fun of him incessantly, or sends him videos, like YouTube videos of, hey, you need to do these moves because they would work with your character and work with you. Mm-hmm. And Travis was like, it's probably like triple flips. I'm like, no, it's probably some crazy Euro thing he saw in a rounds match or something from 1970 that Danielson thought, this will fit you. And you get a guy like that in your company, and they're motivated, and they know it's not going to fall on deaf ears, because if you have a Ryback, you go out there and you start doing those moves, Vince is going to be like, hey, come on now, young brother. Mm-hmm. Like, who told you to do? Just stick to the script. Stick to the plays I gave you, baby. You'll be fine. And so with these guys, you get that Ring of Honor early 2000s work ethic and ethos. You're going to get more innovation out of those big men. Like, I love Nick Camarada. Ooh. He's a big dude that if you work with Mark Henry, he's gonna be fire. But why can't he be instead of everybody being in the Cody Rhodes family circus? Why can't Nick be like the heavy for Ricky Starks? And that way you don't have Powerhouse Hobbs having to take these L's all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, AEW has such momentum right now. Like the kind of mid-level show they gave us on Wednesday aside, like, I'm excited, man. Like that Arthur Ashe show is going to be bananas. Like the fact that we've got this enthusiasm, the fact that somebody like a Bryan Danielson, like that dude is money. Like we talked about the cookout on the first episode here, Post Wrestling. That man has a lifetime invitation to the cookout just for the fact that without him, maybe we don't get Kofi Mania, because he championed Kofi behind the scenes. And we need people like that. We need people like Punk, because those are the people that have the ear of the promoters, have the ear of the bookers, have the ear of the creative team. And so I'm excited to see what Punk means, not just for AEW as a company, but what it could mean for some of these younger wrestlers, particularly wrestlers of color coming up, guys.
And I'm going to give him props, because I know a lot of people are saying, what's the black dude's name in the Rhodes family? What's his name?
Lee Johnson?
Lee Johnson. When he came out, I know a lot of people were just weren't like thrilled with it. They said, I like Lee Johnson, but I mean, look, I take W's for our people wherever we can get them. I'm glad that brother came out in that last segment. So at
Lee
least
Johnson got that main event spot, baby.
Yeah, so I'm happy for it, man, because I thought it was. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Chris, before we pivoted to the question of the month, like, I was just happy, given that we had Malachi Black in that segment, Rich, that he didn't attack Lee Johnson, because one thing I will not abide by in my pro wrestling is black on black crime. Mm-hmm. And with that, let's go to this month's Ask an Advocate, and we got a really good question here, Chris, from N.W.A, a.k.a. Mac from Toronto. And if you want to leave a question for the advocates, you can either do so at the Post Wrestling Forum, or you can email us at nubianworldorder@gmail.com. And so this week's question, fellas, is how did you come across pro wrestling in the first place? Was it something friends and family were into, or did you stumble into wrestling on your own? Rich, I'll let you go first, man, since you are our guest this week. How did you first get into this crazy, crazy thing called pro wrestling, man?
Oh, for me, it was easy. I grew up in New York, pal. So since we were in the New York market, everything in terms of Saturday, Sunday after church, Wrestling Challenge, Superstars. They were, right after cartoons. It'd go right on to that on Fox. So it just kind of was natural. It just kind of came to me. I didn't find out about WCW until maybe 93, 94, when we went to the video store and got to start renting stuff like Bass at the Beach. And I saw this dude with a painted face that looked like the Ultimate Warrior, but wasn't. And that started my path down that track.
Shout out to that GOAT, the man called Sting, regardless of what...
Yeah, don't let Cam, if y'all listen, don't let Cam Hawkins, don't let Seahawk bring you down with your Sting love. That man is broken. He can't accept how awesome and amazing Steve Sting Borden is.
Yes, the GOAT. Look, and I don't know, maybe this is just a coincidence, but the last time Cam was on the Kings of Sport, he had some disparaging comments towards that man called Sting, and unfortunately, he hasn't been back. So I don't know if those two things are related. Correlation does not equal causation, but I'm just saying, ever since that man bad talk Sting, he ain't been back on the Kings of Sport, even though we got love for Cam. Chris, what about you? How did you get into pro wrestling? Was it something similar to Rich where it hooked you at a young age?
Yeah. So, I grew up in Los Angeles for the first half of my childhood. Then I moved to Tennessee, then back to Los Angeles in 2004, 5, something like that. But yeah, man, I think with me, my wrestling trajectory started with my uncle, because my uncle watched all kind of wrestling. He's from Harrisonburg, Virginia, so not that far away from you.
No.
And he grew up on the NWA, and then I grew up on both. Kind of like Los Angeles is kind of weird because in a lot of ways we are a WWE town city. But in a lot of ways, we're like a WCW town city, too. Like, Sting was always kind of just loved out here. I remember being here in middle school, and when Hogan and Sting would do, tag team loops on house shows, Sting would always get cheered because people knew Sting was from the L.A. area. And every time he tagged Hogan would get booed.
As it should be.
Yeah, and this was before I even knew Hogan wasn't really from Venice Beach. I just think that, it's just so. And then with Los Angeles, we also had WCW would play the Forum most of the time. That's where the Lakers played. And then WWF would play the LA Sports Coliseum, not the Coliseum, the LA Sports Arena. That's what the Clippers played at that time. So it was just a really, I love wrestling. What's kept me into wrestling is just, these behind the scenes people like Meltzer and Wade Keller and The Law and stuff like that. Because I would have given up on this shit a long time ago if it wasn't for the behind the scenes stories. I don't care about the tabloids, with real people and stuff. That shit doesn't interest me. Always the behind the scenes stuff interests me. That interests me a lot of times more than what I'm seeing on television, man. When you look this Triple H, Nick Khan, Vince McMahon stuff, that is fucking dynasty right there. That's Dallas. That's Empire. That is
Succession.
That's Succession. It's all of those shows in one, man. And you're just there waiting to see how it plays out. And and the funny thing is even though we already know Nick Khan is not going to succeed in that position, not because Nick Khan isn't a talented dude, because I know a couple people who had him as an agent, but just because he's working for Vince McMahon, just like Barrios and Wilson, just like every other person that's been in those positions. At the end of the day, you got one God to please, and So that's the stuff that keeps me interested in wrestling, and then just the online fandom and stuff like that. But yeah, what brought me in is not the same thing that keeps me in. Like a lot of my friends, once they found out wrestling wasn't real, they just fell off of it. I discovered the Observer in high school, and I was like, what? And just read it on the story. It's it just, that's what keeps me in.
So my story is similar, a little bit different, but I first kind of discovered wrestling. Like wrestling, first of all, wrestling, if you're of a certain age, I think if you're over 30, wrestling has always been this thing that was out there, and it was in popular culture. Like every sitcom had a wrestling episode. Every cartoon had a wrestling episode. So I was always aware of the idea of what professional wrestling was, but my mother was actually the person that had me sit down and watch it for the first time. She's from Texas, and so her wrestling, like the wrestling of her youth, was that world class, like the Von Erichs and whatnot. Like that was her jam. And so like she would get the tapes and we would watch Kerry and Kevin and David and all them boys. All of them except for Lance. We don't support Lance Von Erich in the Milton household. But we would watch these, and so then the natural progression, when you get that first hit, Rich Fann, it's like, what's next? What can I find next? And being in Virginia, Virginia, Atlanta, we were always kind of based in the South, the early part of my childhood, and so we were in NWA country, WCW country, and so Flair and Sting and Steamboat, like those are my guys. The Midnight Express, R.I.P. to Bobby Eaton, like those were my guys back in the day.
Right.
And then it just kind of grew. Like Sundays, I love that Rich brought up Sundays, because Sundays, and maybe this is a uniquely black thing, but Sundays at my house were weird, because my family is very religious, very spiritual, so we would always be at church. And then when we got home, it was like everybody had an hour of TV while we were, eating and decompressing or whatever. So my sister would get the first hour, and she'd always want to watch some kind of cartoon or whatever. Pops would get the second hour, and Pops would always want to watch Tony Brown's Journal. And for anybody of a certain age that is black, like Tony Brown's Journal was the driest television program ever. It came on PBS, was an hour long. It was Tony Brown. He's an old black journalist talking about old news stories. And it was just that was the vegetables I had to get through, Rich, so that I could get my 1 hour of WCW or WWF on Sunday. Right. And then, it just grew from there. And I think Kris brings up a really interesting point, because I've got a lot of friends that have kind of fell off in terms of used to be big fans, and now like they're interested when something like Punk happens. But for the most part, they don't care. Like they'll show up for WrestleMania because that's more an event than an actual wrestling thing. But for the most part, they're checked out. But I always stuck with it, and I always found like different strains to continue the drug metaphor to feed my fix. If WCW wasn't hitting, I check out WWF. WWF wasn't hitting. Let's see what's up with this ECW. ECW is not hitting. Let's go for a little international. And check out this AAA. Check out this New Japan. Check out some of this other stuff that's out there. And so when I've been something that I've been interested in. And I don't know when. Like if you paid me $1 million, this is gonna sound crazy, Kris. If you paid me $1 million and said you can't watch wrestling no more for the rest of your life, I would probably have to tell you to take that money, man, because I can't do it. Like, it's just part of who I am now.
Same here. Like, when I moved to Knoxville in middle school, one of the because I hated Tennessee when I first got to Tennessee, and then I grew to love that place. But like I got all this like Knoxville wrestling, Smoky Mountain wrestling, Memphis wrestling, all this just great stuff. And then I found out that it was a world outside of WWE and WCW. So that it's just those kind of things that kind of just kept my fire burning for wrestling, because I'm not my allegiance isn't to one company. My allegiance is just to the genre of professional wrestling.
Yeah, and I do think like there's something to be said, like for people like us, people like Rich, that people like John and Wade, they grew up watching the thing and now cover the thing or give commentary on the thing or give opinions on the thing, and it's like even when wrestling is bad, it's good to have folks like us and folks like Wade and folks like Uncle Dave. Like, even when a thing is bad, you can still enjoy it. You can still love it for what it can be, even if it's not that thing right now.
Right,
so, Like, I think Rich, if I came to you, if I made up this fake scenario where somebody was trying to throw away $1 million and said, Rich Fann, I give you $1 million if you never watch a minute of wrestling again for the rest of your life. Could you do it? Because honestly, I don't think I could.
No, I mean, just it depending on how strict they are with it. Like, I'm one Malcolm in the Middle away, or one wrestler in the middle of a wrestler appearing as a superhero, because at some point they're going to suplex somebody. I'm like, oh, that reminds me of it. As soon as my fingers are already on the YouTube link and watching a match of theirs. So yeah, no, I don't think I can do it.
So yeah, that's how deep we are into this, man. But shout out to Mac, man. That was a great question. Keep the questions coming, man, because I loved it that we can kind of talk about our experience, which it might be different than a lot of people listening, but I'm sure there's some commonalities and some similarities. So we appreciate that question. But that's gonna do it for this show, man. Like, this has been a great episode of the podcast, man. And before we get out of here, Rich Fann, in addition to stepping on these milk crates in the hood right now, what you got going on? What you got going on the Torch? Let people know what we can expect from one brother Rich Fann.
Well, let's see, brother Nate. I got coming up this weekend. Everything mailbag with Zach Hadorn, the assistant editor there at the Torch. We go through some questions like, what would have happened if the WWE folded in the 80s? We did a full what if scenario and how the other territories would have reacted. Questions on why do fans care so much about ratings and stuff like that. I also have on my show The Deep Dive, which is on the PW Torch Daily Cast. All of these are on the Torch. If you look at the Torch anywhere you get podcasts, you'll find me. But my Deep Dive show on Saturday, I have Mark Blutman, one of the showrunners and writers for Boy Meets World, Girl Meets World, Ghost Rider on Apple TV. And he talks through Nick Khan, Super Agent. He talks through how WWE failed Bianca from a pure storytelling standpoint. And when a brother's got an Emmy for writing, I'm going to listen to what he had to say, especially considering he wrote almost a year ago for WWE for a Cup of Coffee. And so he talked about that experience too. And then finally, I'll have my Everything with Rich Fann VIP show I have with Wade Keller, the editor-publisher of The Torch, where we talk about the week's events and literally everything. Mostly we have a Succession theme to it, so if you haven't seen HBO's show, we will try to convince you to do so. But thank you so much for having me on, and I always appreciate it, and always appreciate chopping it up with you and Kris.
Awesome. And where can people find you on these Twitter streets, brother?
Easy. You can find me on Twitter at Rich_Fann, Fann. Happy to chat with you. Happy to chop it up. Just don't be that weirdo that comes in my mentions to tell me, hey, 8 years ago, I disagreed with you about a take on applesauce, and so you suck, dude. That's not what we're about here. Let's just chill.
Real quick, talking about things that don't suck, Rich. We mentioned it off the top when you came on the show this week, but let the people know about your experience at AEW in Pittsburgh. How was that, man? Being in the building for your returning hometown hero, even though I think she's supposed to be a heel, Britt Baker, DMD.
Oh, I thought it was awesome. The fans loved her. Hopefully now the evil rumor that Pittsburgh was a bad town is kind of put to bed, because it's not necessarily a bad town when you give it something they want to cheer for. Or if you put it in an arena that's built for the acoustics you want as a wrestling company. I argue that going to the PPG Paints Arena where the Penguins play, while it's a bigger venue, it's also the sound carries and then it just kind of dies. And so I don't think they're going to take the time, and haven't taken the time to mic it the right way. because I usually would hear chants in the arena, but it would be the opposite. Instead of people kind of going along with the crowd, it'd be let's go Steelers, let's go Penguins, and they don't want you to hear that, so it sounds like a muted mess. So, yeah, I thought it was a great time. I thought the local talent, they had Lee there, so I was like, okay, I'm happy to see Lee start to get that dark shine, and let's get him on Dark Elevation, Dark C-Lab 2020, and then let's get him on that TV show and get that man paid.
Yes, no doubt. Yeah, I'm excited, man. Like the last live show I've been to was probably 5 years ago. It was a SmackDown taping in Hampton. And so, like, when the news came out this past week that AEW is coming to Norfolk, like, you already know. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be as close to the ring as I can. I'm going to be singing Judas off key, Rich. I'm ready for it, man. Like, I'm excited about what AEW is doing right now. Kris, I know you are excited about not only AEW, but all things pro wrestling. Let the people know what you got going on, man, where they can find you on Twitter, and where they can be enlightened by one Professor Kris Ealy.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at KMEZDoesIt. I've been using Twitter a lot more. I still don't have the app on any of my mobile platforms because I don't need to be drunk tweeting and shit like that. I prefer, like, anytime I'm on Twitter, it's words that I'm, like, consciously typing without any kind of inebriation. So I want to keep it that way.
What you're saying is when you on Twitter, you off that Moderna and Hennessy, unlike the podcast we did. That first podcast, Jesus Christ, man. I want to give a shout out to the people in this wrestling space. And I know, WWE fans and stuff, that the sycophants that do not like the internet wrestling community or journalists or whatever. Honestly, if we didn't take wrestling seriously, nobody else would. And I'm not even calling myself a wrestling journalist. I'm a talking head. But yeah, pardon us for treating wrestling with some degree of reverence and caring about the way people booked and shit, not brushing it off as silly wrestling. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at on that. So. Yeah, I always say, you can love a thing, whether that be a movie or a TV show or a piece of music or a piece of art. You can love a thing and still be critical of that thing and want that thing to be better. And so us having complaints, us having, constructive criticism does not mean that we don't love wrestling. Because you just heard us say in a pandemic economy that we wouldn't take $1 million to never watch wrestling again. So we about this wrestling life, but it can be better. And that's part of why we do this show, is to throw out ideas and our opinions on how it can be better. And so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on wrestling and sports and comic stuff and whatever, you can check me out on Twitter at N8 MOZAIK at Nate Mosaic. Of course, check out the Kings of Sport podcast. Myself, for the moment, I am the only king. I'm the sole king. I'm the head of the table. I'm the tribal chief of the Kings of Sport. As we get closer to episode 300, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/the Kings of Sport. $5 gets you in the door. If you want to pay more, we won't stop you. I've got the Naomi podcast over at DCTV Podcast, along with the Lituation Room, which is a show that used to be known as the Black Lightning Podcast. And now we talk about all sorts of things. Like we just did a show on the Suicide Squad and other topics from a nerdy, blurty perspective. So you can check that out. I've got the Main Event and the Chain Reaction over at Place to Be Nation. I got the Rocky Maivia Picture Show here at Post, which is on hiatus, but you never know when it'll pop back up. I got a lot of stuff, man. Some would say too many shows, but hey, we got time in this pandemic life. So that's where you can find me at N8 MOZAIK. And if you want to send feedback for this show, again, NubianWorldOrder@gmail.com or hit us up on the Post Wrestling Forum. So that's going to do it for another successful edition of the NWA Podcast. Shout out again to our brother, Rich Fann, for joining the show. Happy to have Rich as always. Glad that Rich was able to join us for more than 26 seconds. I'm glad you could make time, bro.
Happy to do it. And, NWA never has to worry about getting pushed out of the way in the favor of a short timer, or, you're not going to pull out an old host who's been injured for a few weeks.
Yeah. Like, Brian Mann is not coming back to take over this show, as much as I love Brian Mann. So, shout out to Rich for joining us. Shout out to Kris, as always, for being my tag team partner. Shout out to Andrew Thompson, who brought you the news earlier in this episode. And shout out to John Pollock and Wei Ting for providing the platform. So that is going to do it for the NWA Podcast. This month, we'll be back next month with an all-new edition of the Nubian Wrestling Advocate. So, for Rich Fann, for Andrew Thompson, for Kris Ealy, I am the Godfather, Nate Milton. And remember, the revolution may not be televised, but it damn sure will be podcast. See y'all next time.
It's for the culture and we reppin' it.